join us so we have critical mass, and we will kick this off in just 2 minutes.
Cameroon, my love, my pain. This children they cry for the streets. Conscious the echo no be. Mama they run, Papa they hide. Home down, but we no fit decide. Anglophone cross the steering we apart. Northwest, southwest, they bleed from her. Brothers and enemies, the lives they burn. Oh, Cameroon, where we go wrong. French. Pourquoi ça, mon pays pleure? La paix est partie, la peur demeure. Nos enfants souffrent, nos terres en feu. Seigneur, regarde, aide-nous mieux. Cry for Cameroon, cry for my land. It's we know. Why did we oh Lord, bring life, take away this love. Take the God like rain, bring back peace from my side. Oh my country, I know God, use them lost, no future clear. Politicians, they lie, they know they care. We didn't go school, fear everywhere. Sorrow, they heavy for the air. Families, they mourn every day, new grave. People want up, but they know they grave. Freedom, they find and change with the way. Oh, Cameroon, who go ahead? On pray pour la paix, Seigneur, délivre-nous. We dey cry to the suffer, tired to the lose. Nos cœurs blessés, nos vies détruites. Ne laisse pas encore briller dans la nuit. For Cameroon, that's why my home. Bring us peace.
Okay, good morning again, everyone. Thank you for joining us to another session on this Holy Saturday. It's Easter weekend, and we know people are, Christians are very engaged this weekend, but we also observe that even on this Holy Week and Holy Weekend in our home country, Cameroon, they wouldn't pause to continue in their initiative to destroy what was meant to be the hope of millions of Cameroonians, a country that they could believe in, a country that they could be proud of. As we gather here, you have representatives of the people of Cameroon undoing what was meant to have been built into a prosperous country. So the fight must not stop. We must not take a weekend off because this is work that is necessary and has to be done. So I thank you all for making the sacrifice to be with us today, for joining us in this conversation, crucial conversation about the future of our country. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Are Obenson. I'm with Project C, and I am going to invite Elizabeth here to join us in the opening of of the show.
Yes, I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm changing, on my computer. But I think that it is all perfect right now because at least, I can be on camera as I fix this. So thank you so much, Ari. And, I know that I've been missing for a few weeks. For those who know that I am usually here and never really missing. But, the good thing is, like you said, we can never stop what is for Cameroon. And, I just wanted to say that, and I'm sure that maybe we've heard this before. Uh, and, I just want to say that this is on behalf of Project C, but not. Okay, Ari, I'm gonna go ahead and say that we're in a position to redefine what we do also, and I'm sure that that has already been mentioned. And we're in a position to redefine what we do, as Ari said. This fight doesn't stop, and what is happening is as we came in as Project C to make sure that there was it seems like this is 10 years ago now, but that's just to tell you the intensity and all that has happened in a very short time. So, and this is just a reminder for all of us to really put things in perspective and really understand what is being done here at Project C. And so, when we came in, literally we started in August, and sorry that I have to take you that far back, which seems like 10 years ago, but this is just August 2nd when Eric initiated a group and that we start doing what we're doing. And as we started this, we have been very consistent, as you know, and the whole idea was that we can be, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to do some switch appliances just because of, a little technical difficulty here. But as this has been going on, we decided that we wanted this election to be right. And it was right, as we all know that, because Tchiroma is the one who won the election. But so much happened. His life was turned in one other country, and all throughout, Project C stood by him. And in this process, we
Okay, I think for a moment I think we have lost connection with Elizabeth here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. I was just changing from my phone to my computer. My computer wasn't coming in, and this is just real life. So, and I feel better now. But anyways, I just wanted to say that we've had to. Am I on the right path? I just want to make sure. And, yeah. I don't want to come across so. We just have to be real, and we're saying this so that we all who are listening can really participate. We've had to redefine what we're doing. And not going out of base. But when we're in a situation where we thought, well, if we shine the light and everybody in this fraud, we know that they're not just going to hand the baton and say, hey, take it over. There's going to be a scuffle. But none of us knew how dense, intense, how corrupt it was, where blatantly the election was stolen away. And Tchiroma had to run away for his life as we know it. And then, you know, in this process, we have kept engaged. We've kept engaged on what is going on. We have been educating on certain, you know, factions of the economy, our resources, and these are very important calls. We have gotten to visit with all the experts and all the highly educated, specialized Cameroonians who are in the diaspora, but we're still sitting here. And the truth is, Tchiroma is not in the country. So we cannot just go on with business as usual. And I'm just giving an FYI here. We've had to define, you know, how do we want to go? And they're two, not separated, but there's a path that we have to take as, you know, Project C, that is for you, the people. And the people do want, you know, Tchiroma to be in power. But we also know that, you know, his life is at risk. So we're in a crossroads defining how do we keep engaged? How do we focus on where we're going? And these are real questions. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to say that because for those of you who've been extremely loyal, you know, across board, who have been listening and understand what is at stake, I'm going back to what Ari said, is that it doesn't really stop. It cannot stop, because that's what has happened in the past, is that we hit a wall and everybody settles. We hit a wall and everybody settles. And as we hit the wall and everybody settles, what has happened that we've become numb. We've just become numb to the reality. And we're seeing the impact right now. So the Constitution is being tampered with in a very, very funeral. We were numb. It's not because we're not aware, and I'm talking locally and out. It's not we're not aware, but over time of starting and stopping, this is what we are. So I believe that in Project C, we're doing something that is very unique and it's very challenging. And we're really grateful because, you know, this is all of us. So when I say we're grateful, it's not a Project C. Of course, maybe those in Project C with a voice, but everyone who is here we're really grateful that we're keeping the lamp. And if we don't do what we're doing, then that's when we know that we've betrayed the future of our country, which is the children of our country. So, yeah. You know, Ari, I'm going to hand it back to you. Well, I know I digressed a little bit, but I've been thinking that, you know, something needs to be said. So
I'm going to be very biblical this weekend,
okay,
because it's Easter weekend, and it was Good Friday yesterday when this bill was introduced into Parliament, equivalent to the betrayal of Jesus, for those who are Christians, and you know, we have just witnessed, it's breaking news, that the bill has been tabled in Parliament and voted, and the position of Vice President introduced, equivalent to the death of our country and equivalent to the death of Christ. That's the dimensions in which we should take it. And the question is, how will our country resurrect? Because after this massacre, this assassination, essentially, with the complicity of the representatives of the people, it's equivalent to betrayal by Judas that we are experiencing. So it's a dark, dark Saturday. If we thought stealing the elections was bad and dark, this is the destruction of the very foundation of our country, its constitution, that defines everything, who we are, why we exist, the purpose of a nation, and that in itself has lost its value. And we wonder whether we exist even as a country. Let us take a moment and listen to a report put together by Mimi Mefo with reference to this constitutional reform that is supposed to be taking place in Cameroon and how ridiculous it is. It is going to be the subject of our conversation. And to all Cameroonians who are listening to us here and on all the platforms that we're broadcasting live, we have to assume that the journey for a new Cameroon begins today. That whatever happened in Parliament today marks the end of the Cameroon as it was known. We have to have the courage. We have to be audacious enough. We have to believe in our capacity and our ability to define who we are as a people and take our destiny into our own hands. For we have tried every other means to bring reason to this senseless government, and they have proven beyond doubt that they have no interest in representing the people, in creating a pathway for sustenance, prosperity, and development of our people. So it must be time for us to look beyond the odds and see how we can make that happen. And it all begins with a plan. It begins with the mindset, with the decision that we have the ability, we have what it takes to be able to develop a vision and mobilize people around that vision and drive the change that we need for our country, Cameroon. So let's watch Mimi's. Let's get a sense of how she does the analysis, to join us in the analysis of the current situation in Cameroon. So I'm going to share.
Ari, just a quick sec. As you do this, just remember the two, just if you know, to click the two dots so that it doesn't break while we're listening to it.
Okay.
Yeah, once you go to share on the side, on the left side, it should be the left side, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that way it would be a smooth play.
Okay. Just give me a minute here. But
Cameroon's parliament met on April 2nd, 2026 in a special congress convened by the President of the Republic, Paul Biya. And on a surface level, what lawmakers are examining looks like is some sort of a technical reform. But once you step into it, you realize that something much bigger is happening in Cameroon politics. Because this is not just about creating a new position. It's about redesigning how power moves in Cameroon, especially when it changes hands. Let's start with what's new and what's not. The proposal is introducing the role of the Vice President of the Republic of Cameroon. Now, for many Cameroonians, especially the younger generation, this might sound entirely new, but historically, it's not new. Cameroon has had a Vice President before, yes. Back in the federal era, after reunification in 1961, the country operated under a system where power was shared between the East and the West Cameroon. The position of vice president existed within that structure as part of a delicate political balance, you know, the Anglophones and the Francophone parts of the country. But in 1972, when the federal system was abolished and Cameroon became a unitary state, like what we have now, it's a unitary state, that position disappeared completely. So since then, for over 5 decades, Cameroon has functioned without the post of the vice president. So what we are seeing today, what is happening now at the National Assembly is not just a creation. It is a way, a return, because it's something that we've seen before. But this is crucial. It is not the same vice presidency. Let me explain. Under the current proposal, the vice president will not be chosen by the people. That's how it's different. And they will be appointed by the President of the Republic. They will be removed by the President of the Republic, and they will be able to exercise powers that only the President decides to delegate. So this is not a second center of power. It is an extension of the first. Probably legal minds can explain. But this is like some sort of, some sort of a subordination. Like there's a hierarchy and there's a sub-hierarchy. The real shift here, what we are seeing, is about succession. Now, this is where things become serious. Until now, if the presidency became vacant through death, resignation, or incapacity, Cameroon had a clear succession or transitional mechanism that was in place. The president of the Senate was going to step in temporarily, and elections will be organized within a particular time frame. We could do another video subsequently to talk about that. In other words, the system paused if the president is not there and then returned to the people. That was what obtained before the current proposal that we're having at the National Assembly. But this particular proposal that we are talking about today is changing that particular logic. So with the new framework, if the presidency becomes vacant, that will mean that the vice president immediately takes over and completes the term of the president. That's if we have a vice president now. With the current structure that we are seeing, it will mean that the vice president is going to take over and complete the current mandate of Biya that has just started. So no immediate election will take place. It will also mean that no transitional pause unless the vice president is unavailable. So effectively, the country moves from a transitional succession model to a continuous succession model. And that difference is everything. So why is this important? Why does this matter? Because it introduces something that Cameroon has never formally had before: the possibility of a pre-positioned successor. A president can now appoint someone who, in the event of vacancy, does not just hold power temporarily, but inherits it fully for the rest of the mandate. The government's argument is that the authorities want continuity, they want efficiency, they want what they've called stability. They also argue that it avoids the cost and disruption of organizing elections in uncertain moments and ensures that the machinery of the state keeps running without interruption. And this is fair. When we are looking at it from a very surface level, many political systems around the world that we see today are built around that idea that there's need for continuity and stability. But here is where the questions begin when it comes to the context of Cameroon, because while the structure is changing, the balance of power is actually not changing. The president is still appointing the vice president, is defining the powers, and can remove that vice president at any time. So this is not power sharing. It's a reordering of succession within the same concentration of power. And this is why history becomes very important. Now, the vice presidency that existed before 1972 that I talked about was part of a federal compromise, a system that was designed to balance identities, regions, and political interests. I've talked about the Anglophones and Francophone parts of Cameroon. What is being proposed today now at the National Assembly is not about balance. It's about continuity within a centralized system. We have some legal minds that could interpret better for us in the comment section. So what are we talking about or looking at here? We are looking at a reform that anticipates a moment in Cameroon rarely discussed openly, but one that defines every political system. What happens when power change hands? And more importantly, who gets to decide that particular moment? The system or the people? Clearly, it's going to be the system. So my final thoughts, what I think about this is that the parliamentary session is very important. What is taking place now is very important. It's historic, not because a new title is being introduced, but because the rule of political transition is being quietly rewritten. People are not talking about it. From a system that pauses and asks the people to one that can move forward without stopping. So the people's opinion will no longer matter. It will be about the system and its continuity. And when that moment comes, whenever it comes, this decision will determine not just who leads Cameroon next, but how they got there. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section. In the hours and days ahead, we'll get experts to come and talk about this. This is Cameroon, our country, and we'll continue to analyze, to talk about it, to bring some of these issues to fore so that many people can get to see exactly what is happening. And we may need all the brains, all the political analysts to come together to make it very clearer for the people to understand exactly what is happening. Thank you for listening. It is always a pleasure.
Thank you, Mimi, for the analysis that you made. Gave us a synthesis of the situation. And whilst she was doing that, we're talking about bringing in some similar analysis for our French-speaking audience. And once we do that, Bernard, please just be on standby. Once I run this, which is a synopsis we'll talk to this.
Imaginez un architecte de génie qui conçoit un bâtiment parfaitement équilibré. Les fondations sont hyper solides, les murs porteurs sont calculés, mais vraiment au millimètre près pour répartir le poids.
Ouais, une vraie symphonie architecturale.
C'est ça. Et la circulation entre les pièces est d'une fluidité absolue. Mais voilà, 30 ans plus tard, les occupants décident de construire un deuxième toit super lourd, juste au-dessus du premier.
Pas pour remplacer l'ancien, j'imagine, mais juste pour l'ajouter par-dessus.
Voilà, exactement, au cas où. Et ensuite, ils installent une deuxième porte d'entrée principale, mais qui mène directement dans un mur.
Mais ça n'a aucun sens d'un point de vue architectural, on est d'accord?
Absolument aucun. Et pourtant, c'est très exactement ce qui est en train de se passer en ce moment même, là, en avril 2026, avec la loi fondamentale de tout un pays.
C'est pas qu'une simple liste de lois posées les unes à côté des autres. C'est un véritable écosystème. Chaque article est un engrenage relié à un autre.
Ouais, tout est connecté.
Exactement. Et pour comprendre comment tout un système peut finir par se gripper ou carrément menacer de s'effondrer sous son propre poids, il faut impérativement analyser les plans d'origine, puis retracer chaque coup de marteau qui a modifié la structure au fil des décennies.
Notre exploration d'aujourd'hui plonge justement en plein cœur de cette mécanique de l'État. On va voir comment les règles du jeu d'une nation mutent, se transforment et parfois se déforment complètement.
Un vaste programme.
Et pour ça, on s'appuie sur un cas d'étude qui est absolument fascinant, tiré de l'actualité politique du Cameroun à travers un texte analytique au titre particulièrement frappant, la bâtardisation de l'architecture constitutionnelle du Cameroun.
Le mot est fort, hein?
Très fort. Et ce n'est pas le pamphlet d'un observateur anonyme sur Internet, loin de là.
Non, en effet. Ce texte est signé par la professeure Koura Félicité Owana. Mfege. Et on parle là d'une experte internationale sur les questions constitutionnelles et électorales.
Une vraie pointure du domaine, quoi.
Exactement. Elle a une expérience de terrain massive. Elle a accompagné plusieurs pays africains et du Maghreb dans la conception de leurs propres institutions.
Ah oui, donc elle sait de quoi elle parle.
Tout à fait. Elle est aussi une ancienne enseignante en droit constitutionnel à l'université Paris 12, Créteil. Donc, ces mots ont vraiment le poids d'une clinicienne qui connaît intimement la salle des machines des États.
Alors, juste avant d'entrer dans le vif du sujet, posons une règle de base essentielle pour cette analyse. L'objectif ici n'est absolument pas de s'immiscer dans la politique interne camerounaise.
Non, bien sûr.
Ni de prendre parti pour tel ou tel camp, ce n'est pas notre rôle. Ce document, c'est un laboratoire à ciel ouvert. On va l'étudier froidement pour comprendre les dynamiques universelles du pouvoir.
Parce qu'une constitution désarticulée par des arrangements de circonstances, on peut en observer sous presque toutes les latitudes au final.
C'est clair. Bon, décortiquons tout cela. Les réformes controversées de 2026 dont on va parler, elles ne sortent pas de nulle part. Il faut d'abord regarder à quoi ressemblait le bâtiment avant que les occupants ne commencent à abattre les cloisons, ce qui nous ramène à l'idéal de 1996.
Oui, 1996. Ce qui est fascinant ici, c'est que cette constitution-là, c'est vraiment le plan d'architecte originel. L'auteur attribue cette œuvre au professeur Joseph Ouana.
Qu'elle décrit d'ailleurs avec une formule très précise, non ?
Oui, elle l'appelle le primus inter pares, donc le premier parmi ses pairs. Ce texte avait une ambition très claire, en fait, instaurer ce que l'on appelle en droit un régime semi-présidentiel rationalisé.
Alors, je vous arrête tout de suite, parce que le terme rationalisé, ça a l'air très clinique. Mais concrètement, qu'est-ce que ça implique pour les leviers du pouvoir? Parce qu'on entend souvent dire qu'un régime semi-présidentiel, ça penche toujours naturellement vers la domination du chef de l'État.
C'est vrai. Eh bien, la rationalisation, c'est justement l'art de prévoir ces frictions humaines et de les encadrer juridiquement. L'objectif assumé par Joseph Aouna, ce n'était pas d'affaiblir l'État ou de créer un exécutif impuissant, hein.
Donc il voulait quand même un président fort.
Voilà, un président fort, capable d'agir et de diriger. Mais la subtilité résidait dans l'imposition de contre-pouvoirs, tout aussi robustes. Et le texte mentionne spécifiquement les articles 26 et 34 de cette Constitution.
D'accord.
Ces articles ne se contentaient pas de créer un parlement purement décoratif, ils lui donnaient de vraies dents.
Des dents. C'est-à-dire la capacité de mordre si l'exécutif dépasse les bornes. Comment ça marche sur le papier?
Eh bien, par des mécanismes de contrôle direct. Un parlement vigoureux, selon cette architecture, il possède le pouvoir de bloquer des budgets si la politique du gouvernement dérive, ou même de convoquer et de questionner les ministres.
Ah, donc l'exécutif propose, mais il est obligé de négocier en permanence avec la représentation nationale?
Exactement. Et à cela s'ajoutait l'article 37, alinéa 2, qui visait à sanctuariser l'indépendance de la justice.
Le fameux juge indépendant.
C'est ça. Dans l'esprit du concepteur, le juge devait être le dernier rempart, totalement hermétique aux pressions politiques.
L'équilibre parfait de Montesquieu, quoi. Le pouvoir arrête le pouvoir. Mais en lisant l'analyse, il y a un détail qui m'a particulièrement interpellée. Une sorte de fenêtre qui aurait pu changer l'allure de tout l'édifice, mais qui n'a jamais été ouverte. Le texte parle de la région du Nouzo, le nord-ouest et le sud-ouest.
Ah oui, c'est un point crucial. Le professeur Orona avait effectivement anticipé les défis spécifiques liés à cette zone anglophone.
Dès 1996.
Dès 1996. Il avait préconisé et prévu des stipulations pour une forte autonomisation de la région du Nouzo. C'était une vision très avant-gardiste de la décentralisation qui était vraiment destinée à absorber et à apaiser les revendications linguistiques et culturelles au sein même des
Et qu'est-ce qui s'est passé?
Eh bien, comme le
C'est quand même dingue. Quand on connaît l'histoire récente et les crises profondes qui ont secoué ces régions, réaliser que le plan de prévention existait déjà il y a 30 ans, ça donne le vertige. L'architecte avait des de sécurité, mais
Oui, et la source insiste lourdement là-dessus. Pour Joseph Ouna, la Constitution, elle ne devait en aucun cas être une simple arme au service de celui qui remporte les élections.
elle ne servait pas à écraser l'adversaire.
Voilà, pas du tout. Son rôle fondamental, c'était d'être une limite absolue. Elle devait encadrer l'autorité, prévenir la concentration des pouvoirs et, point très important, organiser la succession de manière pacifique et prévisible.
Bon, c'est magnifique sur le plan de la théorie politique. Mais soyons cyniques un instant.
Allez-y.
Une constitution construite sur la méfiance du pouvoir solitaire, ça suppose que les acteurs politiques vont accepter de se soumettre à ces limites de leur plein gré. Est-ce que c'est pas le talon d'Achille de toute ingénierie institutionnelle, penser que des règles rationnelles vont suffire à contenir l'irrationalité de l'ambition humaine?
Si, totalement. Et l'histoire constitutionnelle mondiale est remplie de ces moments où la règle juridique craque sous la pression des ambitions politiques. D'ailleurs, la professeure Owanam Fegué identifie le moment chirurgical où l'édifice camerounais a subi son premier séisme majeur.
Parce que les fondations n'ont pas cédé du jour au lendemain. C'est ici que ça devient vraiment intéressant.
Oui, tout a basculé en 2008, avec la destruction d'un concept immatériel mais fondamental, la notion de temps politique.
Ce concept de temps politique est fascinant. L'analyse pointe du doigt la révision constitutionnelle de 2008 et plus particulièrement la modification de l'article 6 alinéa 2. Concrètement, cette révision a aboli la limitation des mandats présidentiels.
C'est ça, le verrou saute.
Le
Okay, so there's a two analysis of the situation, one in English and one in French, and I'll bring in Leopold to follow up on the analysis in French. But I had Bernard Galim. Please, we will bring you up now to just yeah, Bernard.
Yeah, am I on?
Yes, you are.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ari and Elizabeth, for putting this. It's been a Herculean journey since August, and it keeps on getting better, not worse. And it invites us to reflect and think beyond what we see. And that thinking should be geared now towards being proactive and not necessarily reactive. Because if we want to remain reactive, it means we would continue doing what the regime wants us to do. And they would by the regime. And I don't think that I have come across any single Cameroonian who is in support of what they are doing in Yaoundé today. I know Mimi's presentation must have been recorded before today because she did not cover what happened on the 4th. And the 4th of April 2026, Holy Saturday, the constitution has been amended and the president now has the authority to appoint a vice president. And that appointment, I have not seen the text yet, but when I read the bill or the proposed document that was sent to Parliament, the French version said the president might be assisted by a vice president, but the English version said the president shall be assisted by a vice president. You know what happens in Cameroon always with the laws and the technical difficulties. So we need to see the final text that was adopted, and I hope both were not adopted like that in the different languages, because it's going to bring more confusion, as there's always been. But talking about what has happened, this should not be an opportunity for us to lament. This should not be an opportunity for us to mourn. This should not be an opportunity for us to reflect on what they are doing in Yaoundé. Anybody who is aware of what happens in Cameroon was expecting this gesture, either yesterday, today, or tomorrow. So what should be relevant at this material moment is what are Cameroonians thinking about the vision for their country? Because the regime has a vision, and that vision is to remain in power in perpetuity. But Cameroonians definitely do not share that vision. So Cameroonians need to put their heads together and think about a vision that shall bring change in Cameroon. And this is not the first time. In 1982, Amadou Ahidjo caused the amendment of the constitution to introduce the position of the prime minister. And that prime minister was the crowned successor to the president, Amadou Ahidjo, at the time. And true to the words of the constitution, the crowned successor, Paul Biya, took over from Amadou Ahidjo and completed the mandate. Same language has been introduced in this constitution, meaning that there is a problem with the position of the prime minister this time, and something needs to be revised. Cameroonians need to go deeper to understand why they could not just change it to say the prime minister shall succeed the president and complete the mandate. They had to introduce the position of the vice president. When you look at the geopolitical segmentation of power in Cameroon, the dance had already been done. The North, the Grand North, has a position that they have. The Grand West has a position, and then the Grand East has a position, and then the Anglophones have their position. So the Grand North left from the speaker left from the Grand North to the Grand West, and then the president of the Senate left from the Grand West to the Grand North. So the president of the Republic stays with the Grand East, and that is what it is. And since the current prime minister and the geopolitical setup is to the effect that the prime minister is an Anglophone, that tells why the position of the vice president had to be introduced. If not, they should have made a chair dance to bring in somebody and then make the vice president, the prime minister, the automatic successor of the president of the Republic. But that was not done, probably for strategic reasons. And I think this falls in line with what I've just said. But with that said, let us look at what we can do. When the Archdiocese of Douala was celebrating their 70th anniversary, Cardinal Turkson, the Ghanaian cardinal, was in Cameroon, and he said the greatest gift that Cameroonians can offer to the Pope when he arrives in a week or in 2 weeks, or in a week and a half, is a peace plan. Lo and behold, Cameroonians have listened, the regime has listened, and what they are offering to the Pope on his visit is a constitutional amendment that endorses a succession plan in the line of a monarchy. So the Pope is definitely going to come and receive that information, and I don't know what Cardinal Turkson is going to think when he accompanies the Pope, if at all he's going to accompany the Pope in that visit. But the option here by the regime is stay in power at all costs. And we hope that the Pope also notices this. I interviewed Scott Morgan, who works with the Interreligious Freedom Caucus last week, and he told me to know what is going to happen in Cameroon in the next few days, you need to see who is in the room with Biya when the Pope is around. That is going to tell us who and what Paul Biya and his regime are thinking about the position of the vice president. So as Professor Ngong said in one of his articles that he published about 2 weeks ago, he said the Pope generally comes to Cameroon to give blessings to Paul Biya. With this voice, that is going to be of great concern to Cameroonians and especially to the Pope's flock. Those of us who are Christians, trusted sources in Cameroon are the bishops. Would they when the same thing was done? I don't have an answer to that question, but I pray that my Lord Bishops, you take up to the mantle and speak. I know Archbishop Nkeya said Cameroonians abandoned their responsibilities and should not count on the bishops. True, we would only ask the bishops to speak the voice of their sheep, especially when their sheep have lost their voice. We count on the bishops, we trust the bishops, and we hope that the bishops would speak. So with that said, the world sees this as justice in Cameroon. The world observed that the elections of October 2025 were definitely not clear-eyed, and there was some problems with the elections, major problems with the elections. That is why no major European power ever congratulated Paul Biya on his re-election or his re-election. So the world sees that as an injustice, and the world definitely would see this constitutional amendment as an injustice. The question is this: yes, all Cameroonians have spoken to have seen this as an injustice, plus the injustice of the elections, coupled with the injustice of the elimination of Camto from the elections. Everybody injustice. But then what do? What happens? It's left for Cameroonians to think about it and know. I just want to make something that is between what ought to be and what is. As at today, Cameroon's constitution is that the vice president succeeds the president, and the president appoints that vice president and fires that vice president at will. That is what the law is. All the conversations we've had before was on what the law ought to be. Continuing with the conversations on what the law ought to be must be targeted from a different angle. I just want to share this. I'm reading this book by Reverend Father Joseph Awojum. He says what our church could be. We could equally say what our constitution could be. He analyzes what he sees as shortcomings or things that need to be fixed in the church in Cameroon. And I think going forward, we have enough analysis on things that need to be fixed in Cameroon to have that constitution that ought to be. Whether we like it or not, like I said, the constitution is already there. Now, for us to have that constitution that ought to be, it comes down to what political scientists call rapport de force, bargaining power, leverage. What leverage do Cameroonians have? The current regime has its own leverage, and that leverage is narrowed down into military, financial, international relations, media, and human resources. What leverage do Cameroonians have? We have more than 30 million Cameroonians who combined can put together leverage that would outpace what the government or what the regime in Yaoundé has. But how does that come about? That is a question we should be asking. That should come about, in my view, by re-strategizing and developing a vision that can take Cameroon to the next steps. Cameroon can be the land of glory. Someone just shared a post on one of the forums on which I am. He says, food for thought. Minds that seek revenge destroy states, while those that seek reconciliation build nations. Walking out the door to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave all the anger, hatred, and resentment behind me, I would still be a prisoner. That is Nelson Mandela talking. But then, we should look at the vision of a Cameroon that we think should be. And coming together around a vision is completely different than coming together around anger, resentment, and hatred. If we want to come together around with the anger that is boiling in us today because of what happened in Yaoundé today, we would definitely be missing the plot, because we would be reacting to what they have decided. With that said, Cameroon has a population of about more than 30 million. The census, more than 30 million. And those who are in accordance with what happened in Yaoundé today are less than 100,000, I will tell you. So what do the rest of the 29 million people have that the 100,000 do not have? We have our brains we can put together. We have our little resources we can put together. What is lacking? It is that organizational framework that can bring us together to decide on how to put our resources together. By resources, I mean manpower, financial resources, media presence, international networks, military cooperation, which we don't even need. If we are organized, the military in Yaoundé would be for us, because every military, despite the difficulties or despite the hard stance or the hard-heartedness of the government, is always with the people. Because those who serve in that military are you and me. They are just you and I. When we go out into the streets and there are no street lights, the military doesn't live in Mars. They also face those difficulties. When they go to the hospitals, they also have those difficulties that we have. So the question is, how do we strategize to bring Cameroon forward? I have been thinking about this, and I just think that Cameroonians need to come together. Cameroonians need to come together. Whether you're from the north, from the south, from the east, or from the west, you need to come together. Whether you belong to a political party, or you belong to a civil society organization, or you are neutral, we need to come together. Redefining and re-giving birth to a nation deserves a moment of reflection, deserves a moment of self-denial. Let me go where Ari went to. Biblical. Yesterday, for those who went to church, Jesus, on a Holy Thursday, Jesus knew that he was making the ultimate sacrifice on Good Friday. He did not run away. He went into silence. He denied himself the pleasures of wanting to remain in the world. He went into deep reflection, prayed to God, and thought about bringing that change that needs to be brought for the salvation of the world. That is what Cameroonians need. Whether you are from the north, from the south, east, or west, speak English or you speak French, speak Lamso or Wimbumo or Ewondo, that doesn't matter. I think this is a time to reflect on how to move forward. If it cannot happen on homeland, it can happen in the diaspora. Cameroon has an enormous diaspora that should come down to think, should sit down and talk amongst themselves. Just by organizing, meeting somewhere and talking amongst themselves is enormous power that those in Yaoundé cannot overcome. They are listening to us. They know that these things happen. They have seen it happen in different places, and they try to put wedges between Cameroonians so that this does not happen. But we know that that is what they do, and we fall for it every time. So this is the opportunity for us to think about the future of Cameroon, to think about coming together, to think about doing the right thing. And we welcome everybody. We should welcome everybody to talk. I am an advocate of free speech. I like everybody to say what they think. You disagree with me, I disagree with you. But we should arrive at a conclusion. We should talk, we should discuss. That is the only way we can express our vision. That is the only way we can express the way forward. And that is the only way we can design a country or a Cameroon that will be completely different. We need to talk. And Cameroonians in the diaspora, you have this opportunity to meet and talk. Plan ahead of time. Sit down somewhere and talk. It shouldn't have any party coloration. And political leaders, we're in 2026. Since 1991, we've had political leaders come and go. The system stays in place. This system is meant to stay. It can only change if the political leaders agree with we, the people, that we can talk and they can listen to us. We know that the political leaders have invested a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of manpower, a lot of everything to have their ground game. Sacrificing for the nation is not a loss. Political leaders, and Issa Ekana is gone. He sacrificed for the nation. He sacrificed for the nation. He sacrificed for you. He sacrificed for me. He dropped his ambitions, supported Kanto, he was kicked off, supported Tchiroma, and ended up in jail, gave up his life for the nation. Cameroonians, we are more than this. Let us meet and talk. Let us meet and talk. Let everybody meet and talk. Keep away the hatred. Keep away the anger. Keep away the resentment. We know these are human, but let us craft a vision for the future of the country, a vision that does not destroy the country, a vision that brings everybody together. Yeah. We can do this. Those who do not want such a Cameroon would try to put wedges. That will, but still, 30 million Cameroonians, we have the ability to do this. We have Cameroonians who can do this. Cameroonians are rich. Look at what is happening abroad. They are everywhere. They are taking resources. They are taking institutions. They are building businesses, support their own country and do that job right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bernard, for that call to embrace a new beginning for Cameroon. I think this must be the conversation that we have. Léopold, vous avez suivi, tu es sur le terrain, tu suis ce qui sont tes sentiments.
Merci Harry et bonjour à toute notre audience. Vraiment, c'est très embêtant, mais nous sommes engagés et Bernard l'a clairement dit tout à l'heure, cela ne surprend personne. Tout ce qui se passe, c'était prévisible. Et si ce qui arrive était prévisible, nous pouvons aussi aisément prévoir ce qui va se passer. Il ne faudrait pas non plus que cela nous surprenne. Et Bernard est très optimiste. By the way, Bernard, the Pope may come to bless the new Vice President, man. Don't forget that possibility. Donc, il n'est pas impossible que ce vice-président dont la position a été validée aujourd'hui soit nommé avant la visite du pape. Ce n'est pas impossible. Parce que, objectivement, si le président Biya n'est pas allé à Bamenda, par exemple, pour battre campagne, je ne vois pas pourquoi il irait là-bas accompagner le pape. Par contre, il aille l'accompagner à Bamenda. Ce qui vaudrait validation. Mais comme toujours, la question c'est what next? Après le départ du pape, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Parce que la Constitution s'est posée. Et ce qui est très intéressant dans ce que nous sommes en train de faire maintenant, c'est que nous essayons d'éclairer le spécialiste et puis nous essayons d'employer les termes simples pour que l'opinion publique comprenne de quoi il s'agit. Il s'agit essentiellement de régler problème de vacance de pouvoir. Mais malheureusement, il est difficile. On ne renforce pas un peuple en affaiblissant sa démocratie, ce n'est pas possible. Et puis, il est important de rappeler à nos pouvoirs publics qu'une stabilité sans légitimité, ça finit par devenir une illusion. Parce que normalement, une bonne constitution doit pouvoir protéger le peuple, même contre ses dirigeants. Parce que la constitution, on ne l'écrit pas pour régler un problème ponctuel que certaines personnes peuvent relever. On l'écrit pour la postérité. Vous êtes aux États-Unis, la constitution date de combien de siècles? Et tout le monde arrive. C'est-à-dire que nous constatons des manipulations, des machineries dans le but d'imposer quelqu'un. Parce que, par exemple, nous constatons à travers, on va le développer tout au long, c'est sûr, mais nous constatons à travers ce texte-là que, par exemple, celui qui assure l'intérim en cas de vacance de pouvoir a un certain nombre de restrictions qui ne s'appliquent pas aux vice-présidents. Tu l'as dit, danger au plan constitutionnel, c'est que n'importe quel personne peut être vice-président. Et un symbolique. Mais dès qu'il devient président, il a tous les pouvoirs. Il a tous les pouvoirs. Les restrictions même accordées à celui qui a su l'intérim ne s'appliquent plus à lui. Donc, voilà des dangers que nous sommes obligés de relever pour que un de ces jours cela se corrige. Mais Bernard, tout à l'heure, a fait des observations que nous faisons tous, c'est-à-dire que les Camerounais doivent se mettre ensemble. Mais ne perdons pas de vue que ces 30 millions de Camerounais que nous sommes, et nous sommes sur le terrain, tu l'as dit, Harry, il faut le dire, moi je le dis vraiment clairement, nous sommes envoûtés. Nous sommes envoûtés. Nous ne pouvons pas faire ce que nous faisons en ignorant la dimension spirituelle. Voilà le pape qui arrive au Cameroun pour la 4e fois. On reçoit un pape. Ça veut dire que nos dirigeants ont une dimension spirituelle qui semble ne pas préoccuper nos opposants politiques et autres. Et ils situent les choses dans cette dimension-là. Donc, nous devons pouvoir y penser. Ce n'est pas normal qu'on ne puisse pas, que 30 millions de personnes soient autant divisées à partir de certains petits slogans lancés toujours pendant les campagnes électorales politiques. Et après, on se rend compte que non, les Camerounais vivent ensemble sans grand souci, mais ne veulent pas le montrer. Donc voilà un peu, pour répondre à ta question, Harry, les impressions que l'on a sur le terrain, c'est qu'il y a quelque chose. Nous acceptons des choses qu'un être normal, normalement constitué, ne peut pas accepter. L'état des roues, l'état des poubelles, l'indolence et autres, ce n'est pas normal. Mais pris individuellement, chacun brille là où il se trouve, dans le pays où il se trouve. On ne peut pas se mettre ensemble. Ça veut dire qu'il y a une force. Je suis désolé, il y a une force. Il faut en tenir compte. Et ce n'est pas propre au Cameroun. D'autres peuples, d'autres pays africains sont passés par là. Et après, on prend le cas... je vais rapidement citer le cas du pays d'Afrique de l'Ouest et autres. On a été au Mali, on a été en Côte d'Ivoire, au Sénégal et autres. Ben, les imams sont partie prenante du changement dans le pays. Et dans les prêches de vendredi, ils sensibilisent. Mais au Cameroun, l'Église absente, et quand elle ne soutient pas le pouvoir, je dis l'Église protestante et catholique, hein, les imams sont rangés, alors ils font partie du peuple. Et chacun doit jouer son rôle. Nous jouons le nôtre à sensibiliser. Il faudrait que les autres, dans leur congrégation et autres, contribuent aussi à éveiller les consciences des citoyens dans l'intérêt supérieur du pays. Nous devons apprendre à se mettre ensemble à respecter la chose commune et autre. Mais nous sommes très, très divisés et cette division est entretenue par des mécanismes que nous connaissons, puisque les dirigeants, quand on se retrouve en privé, ils sont lucides ensemble. Donc voilà un peu. C'est embêtant, mais nous devons continuer de toutes les façons.
Oui. We have to write the poll Easter weekend. And the Catholic Church is not talking about it. It's Easter weekend. And an unusual circumstance for the members of parliament are actually meeting on Easter Saturday. The urgency of the moment is unexplainable. You cannot explain it. Yeah, why is it so urgent that it's done on this Holy Week? And to your point, the Pope is coming arriving in Cameroon, I believe, on the 15th. 10 days from
yeah.
Yes. So, Bernard, did you? I saw you come back on. Did you have a follow up? Because you both, Bernard and Leopold, have touched on this idea. When we were planning this,
have changed, which is fine.
Let me put it in. When we were planning this session, we had the constitutional reform was going on, right? There was the conversation about we knew this would pass, but there was conversation about what was going on. We all had numerous analysis about how the parliament does not even have the power to make this amendment because it affects the fundamental structure of the country, which under normal circumstances, there has to be an engagement with the Cameroonian people. So take, for example, the Cameroonian people, if it is said that they went through an electoral process, this should have been done before the electoral process so that we have effectively elect a president and a vice president. Why bring this after the elections to have a vice president that has that may, if this is so urgent, would have a 6-year term as 6 years as president, essentially.
Be elected.
Yeah. And yes, and to when drafting the fundamental laws of a country, you cannot use may or might. What you must use is shall or must, right? The president. If you how do you allow the destiny of the country in the whims and caprices of one person, where he may or may not appoint a vice president? So all of those things it's crying over spilled milk. That has been done, right? So before this show just coming on, we have the breaking news: 200 people voted for this law, and then we had about 4 abstentions and 18 against. But it's the law now in our country, Bernard, as you said. And our objective is moving forward from here.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? And how can we, knowing for sure that there is no pathway with the regime to a prosperous Cameroon? They have absolutely no interest in that. But we, the people, have an interest, not just in a constitution, because a constitution is an enabling document that should inspire and motivate us to action. What we must start with is develop a clear vision of the kind of Cameroon that we want, and then determine how we enable it through a document that meets the aspirations of the vision that we develop for our country. And that must be the mission that we embark on now. Bernard, I think that was the direction in which you were going. And please, if you want to accentuate on that. And then after this, I would bring in Eric. I know we had these videos on the reform as it was taking place, but I think at this point, we really need to look forward. So I'll bring in Eric after both of you analyze how we move forward as a country.
All right. Thank you, Ari. And you have put it very nicely. You know, sometimes when we have these conversations, I try to keep away the intellectual or the academic language a lot so that we just discuss on things that will really make sense to people. I know some people in Cameroon who are always on debates and using and trying to those kind of words. But not saying that that's what you're doing, but I want to bring this down again. The Constitution is a document that could be called the minutes of a meeting. A constitution is supposed to be an agreement by all the people, all the components of a society on how they want their society to function. So as Ari has said, a constitution is not a document that should be giving certain conditions. It is already an agreement that decides on the way forward. People have, the whole community has sat and has decided that, okay, this is how our country is supposed to be managed, and you who are in charge only, that is what in Cameroon, the constitution is an instrument that the regime uses to stay in power. And that is not only in Cameroon, excuse me. That is not only in Cameroon, that happens across different countries.
Yeah.
That happens across different countries where regimes want to stay in power. And for those who follow these things, we know about coup d'etat, military coup d'etat in different countries. And I think it's Matthias, not Matthias, Shalema Mesanga Nyamding, who brought up this idea of a constitutional coup d'etat in Cameroon. I'm so sorry.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. So, where we are today, we just need to be realistic. That is why I wanted us to make the difference between what ought to be the law and what is the law. When you move from the idealistic world, from what ought to be in the law to what the law is, we can start shaping our strategies and our vision around reality. And when we shape the vision around reality, we will then move to that position where the law is going to be what we believe it ought to be. This takes me to the point where we have to look at Cameroon as it is, as a country where the institutions are very weak. The institutions are very weak because, and academics and researchers have made this argument multiple times. They are weak because there is a constitutional, Cameroon could be called a constitutional dictatorship because there is a constitution, but it is managed by what they call an autocrat or a dictator. So it is difficult for the institutions to function. And as such, the institutions are weak, and there are very few functional institutions. If you close the Prime Minister's office, Cameroon is still going to function as it is. If you close the courts, Cameroon is still going to function as it is. So what makes Cameroon to function? The military and the presidency. And then they use the media to reinforce what the military and the presidency are doing. So that is what happens in Cameroon. Now, on the other hand, the citizens of Cameroon are willing and they are ready to bring change. They want to see change. The results of the October elections are very clear for everyone to see. So the question here now is, how do we make the citizens participate in that journey of bringing that change? That journey of bringing change is something that could take diverse methods. But I don't want us to focus on the difficulties. I want us to focus on what we can do. When we focus on what we can do, we then factor in the difficulties as the challenges we can face in what we are doing, and we look for alternatives to that, or we look for solutions or mitigating factors to those challenges. Why am I saying this? if Cameroonians in the diaspora could meet, come out with one resolution or come out with one directional strategy for the change of Cameroon, it's possible to get a buy-in from those that we want the buy-in from. Those who are in Cameroon would definitely, some would buy in and some not buy in. There is nothing that is a zero-sum game. There is nothing that would have 100% support. Even the CPDM, we had one of the senators say that this process was wrong. And we know that CPDM people always go together, but at least one of them said that the process was wrong today. So we will never have everybody come together. So let us look at what we can do. And I know that there are things that we can do. Let me give you an example. In 2019, Paul Biya convened the Grand National Dialogue. That was not his will. That was because there was enormous external pressure on Paul Biya to convene that national dialogue. And that was also because the diaspora was playing a significant role in pressuring the international community to take cognizance of the fact that there was a problem on the ground. And that happened. Now, why can the diaspora not replicate that model? It worked at that time to that extent. Why can the diaspora not replicate that model and take it a notch upwards? And see how it's at home, internal recognition and external recognition. That is, the citizens recognize it as a government and the external partners recognize it as a government. Now, the regime in Yaoundé doesn't care about internal recognition. They don't care about what citizens think about their legitimacy. They rather care to see if the international community deals with them as a government. The international community at the same time would prefer to work with a government than to work with no government. So the international community is at a position where they want to see that Cameroonians are saying that this government is not theirs. Because so far, I don't think that Cameroonians have said that this government is not theirs. And there are different ways of saying that. One of those ways is meeting and brainstorming. I don't think that meeting and brainstorming is a negative. It's a plus because you get people to talk. And this should not be a sprint. It should not be a solution. Yeah. We should not think that we're going to get a solution, la, 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 la. It doesn't happen. When I first spoke, I mentioned the journey from 1991 till today. Opposition parties have come and gone. Opposition leaders have come and gone. Biya's regime is still in place. Why? What is holding them in place?
Yeah, but let me just bring in Leopold into this conversation. Yeah. Just Leopold, ce que Bernard est en train de dire, une possibilité pour les Camerounais qui ne sont pas du système, qui sont en dehors, écartés.
C'est-à-dire les nuls.
Les nuls, oui, justement.
Les amba-damba.
Voilà. Comment est-ce qu'on peut se réunir? Qu'est-ce qu'il faut pour qu'on peut se mettre ensemble? Let me just say that what we're trying to do is not unprecedented, right? In 1979 in Zimbabwe, there was what was called the Lancaster House Conference, where Zimbabwe actually drafted its constitution, which led to the fall of the government in then Rhodesia at the time for it to get its independence. There are examples. There's the Arusha Accords. There's the Liberia peace talks that took place as well in Ghana in 2003 of constitutions that were drafted. Even Afghanistan's constitution, right, was drafted in Bonn by a constitutional conference in 2000. So there are examples of people in the diaspora taking initiative to develop the clear vision for a country. Yes,
et c'est ce qui devrait finalement se faire pour le Cameroun de toutes les façons. C'est-à-dire qu'il faudra bien que la diaspora et telle conférence, parce que ça permet effectivement d'accroître la pression. Mais il est important de rappeler quand même, toujours en des termes simples, comme Bernard est en train de faire, que la Constitution en fait, organise le pouvoir du peuple. Et cette constitution ne peut pas être modifiée sans lui, sans ce peuple-là. C'est pas cohérent, c'est pas normal. Et puis, c'est ce que nous essayons de faire là, en ce moment. Pour pouvoir mener les Camerounais à se mettre ensemble et autres, il faut davantage les informer ces changements-là. Et la modification actuelle, en fait, crée, au lieu de créer un successeur légitime, crée plutôt un héritier du pouvoir et sans justement le peuple. Or, ça, c'est facile à comprendre et nous essayons ici, et comme dans d'autres tribunes, de l'expliquer, de le rendre public simplement pour que les gens, quand les gens prendront conscience vraiment de la vérité, ils cesseront de se comporter comme lorsqu'ils ne le savaient pas. Et puis, il faut quand même le dire, les Camerounais se retrouvent, ils se réunissent dans des think tanks et tout ça, et réfléchissent et travaillent. Nous avons pendant 3 ans, dans cette perspective-là, dans un groupe, un think tank que nous avons appelé PNP, Peuple, Nation et Prospérité, People, Nations and Prosperity, ben, on a développé une vision pour le Cameroun sur 10 piliers qui est en train de, c'est-à-dire que qui a toute sa pertinence et il existe d'autres groupes de Camerounais ainsi. Et donc, vraiment, il est important, comme Bernard le disait et comme tu le disais, que des Camerounais se retrouvent. Mais ils ne sont pas obligés de se retrouver au Cameroun. Parce que nous savons quelles sont les contraintes. Nous le savons. Et ce n'est même pas efficace. La preuve est que les débats, par exemple, du dimanche sur les plateaux de télévision ici au Cameroun, si ça changeait quelque chose, il y a longtemps qu'on les aurait arrêtés. Donc, just talk, just talk, just talk. Mais c'est important qu'il y ait une telle conférence à l'extérieur. Et ça, de ce point de vue, la diaspora a vraiment tous les leviers pour pouvoir le faire et associer les bonnes volontés du Cameroun pour pouvoir venir contribuer et autres, et puis sortir quelque chose. Et j'ai bien aimé l'observation de Bernard tout à l'heure. This is not a sprint. Tu vois. Vraiment, nous ne voulons pas le résultat là tout de suite, tout de suite. Non, on travaille pour la postérité. Et puis, bon, ça prendra le temps que ça prendra. Ceux qui sont pressés, bon, en général, les gens pressés sont des gens qui sont dans des partis politiques et on peut le comprendre parfaitement puisqu'ils ont des échéances électorales, mais ce n'est pas notre préoccupation. Nous voulons davantage éclairer les Camerounais pour que nous soyons aussi un pays normal comme les autres pays que nous visitons. Donc, voilà un peu.
Thank you, Leopold and Bernard. But prior to just Leopold, from the perspective of educating Cameroonian people and to talk about the reform, the constitutional reform that has taken place, and I find it, I don't know whether I should call it a reform, because a reform is usually something that's positive. In this case, this I can't qualify it, but just for our audiences that have joined us, we would explain why it is crucial that we're having this conversation today by just giving an analysis of the crisis that has been created with the adoption of this vice president position. And I would run this short video here. Sorry.
Non. Au Cameroun, on assiste en ce moment à un tournant constitutionnel, peut-être le plus important depuis 1996. Il est question de créer un poste de vice-président. Et ça, ce n'est pas un petit ajustement, c'est une refonte profonde de l'architecture du pouvoir. Ça pourrait vraiment redéfinir la démocratie camerounaise. Alors, on va décortiquer ensemble ce que ça signifie concrètement. Ok, alors voilà notre feuille de route pour y voir plus clair. D'abord, on va regarder en quoi consiste cette réforme. Puis, on va s'attaquer au point qui fait le plus débat, un vice-président qui serait nommé et pas élu. On verra ensuite comment ça crée des situations de succession assez confuses, des pouvoirs sans réel contrepoids. Et pour finir, on fera la synthèse des 5 grands problèmes que ce texte soulève. Allez, on commence par la base. Qu'est-ce qui est proposé exactement? Et surtout, qu'est-ce que ce nouveau système viendrait remplacer? Le changement est vraiment fondamental. Jusqu'à aujourd'hui, si le pouvoir devenait vacant, c'était le président du Sénat qui prenait le relais, mais juste pour un court intérim, le temps d'organiser une nouvelle élection. Là, ce qu'on propose, c'est de remplacer ce filet de sécurité démocratique par une succession directe. Le vice-président prend la place et termine le mandat, sans repasser par la case élection. Et c'est là que ça devient vraiment intéressant. Le détail le plus fou, c'est que ce poste n'est même pas obligatoire. Le texte dit que le président peut être assisté d'un vice-président. Peut, pas doit. Tout ce nouveau mécanisme de succession repose donc sur une fonction qui est, en fait, optionnelle. Une fondation qui pourrait très bien ne pas exister à un moment donné. Du coup, ça soulève immédiatement des questions assez sérieuses sur la stabilité et fiabilité du système. Si absente, comment est-ce qu'on garantit la continuité de l'État en cas de crise? Et tout ça, ça nous amène à une question de fond, la légitimité. D'où vient ce vice-président? Comment est-ce qu'il arrive au pouvoir? C'est vraiment un point central de tout le débat. Le projet de loi est très clair là-dessus. Le président nomme et il peut révoquer le vice-président quand il veut, comme il veut, sans aucun contrôle. Ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire que l'autorité du vice-président ne vient ni du Parlement, ni du peuple. Elle vient uniquement du président. Son premier devoir, c'est donc la loyauté, mais pas envers les citoyens, envers celui qui l'a mis en place. Et là, ce que le texte ne dit pas est presque plus parlant. Pas de critères de nomination, pas de validation par le Parlement, pas besoin de justifier pourquoi on le renvoie. Ce manque de garde-fou renforce vraiment cette idée que le vice-président, sans légitimité qui lui soit propre, n'est en fait qu'une extension de la volonté du président. Bon, c'est ici que l'architecture juridique du projet devient, on va dire, particulièrement complexe et, selon l'analyse, assez incohérente. Le projet crée 2 scénarios de succession qui semblent se contredire. Premier cas, le président s'en va, le vice-président prend sa place et finit le mandat. Logique. Deuxième cas, le vice-président ne peut pas prendre la place. Eh bien là, c'est le président du Sénat qui assure l'intérim et qui organise une nouvelle élection. Pourquoi ces 2 logiques complètement différentes? Le texte ne donne aucune explication. Ce chiffre, il faut bien le visualiser. 6 ans. Ça représente le risque potentiel. Imaginons un président élu pour 7 ans qui quitte ses fonctions au bout d'1 an. Eh bien, un vice-président qui n'a jamais été élu pourrait gouverner pendant 6 années entières, sans aucun mandat populaire. Cette question, elle touche vraiment au cœur du déficit démocratique que certains voient dans ce texte. Elle interroge la nature même du lien qui doit exister entre le pouvoir et le peuple. Ok, maintenant, explorons ce qui se passe quand ce successeur prend le pouvoir. Quelles sont les limites qui lui sont imposées? Ou plutôt, l'absence de limites. Un autre, ce cas nouveau vise d'énormes conséquences. Voilà les garde-fous qui existent aujourd'hui. Ils sont là pour empêcher un dirigeant d'intérim de consolider son pouvoir et de changer les règles du jeu à son avantage. Ce sont de vrais verrous de sécurité constitutionnels. Et c'est là qu'il y aura un paradoxe qui, lui, il est temps de rassembler tous ces points. On va synthétiser les 5 problèmes fondamentaux que l'analyse identifie dans ce projet de loi. Pour résumer, on a un poste qui est optionnel, occupé par une personne non élue, qui peut gouverner pendant des années sans vote et qui pourrait bénéficier de failles juridiques lui donnant des pouvoirs immenses. Chaque problème pris tout seul est déjà assez préoccupant. Mais mis ensemble, il crée un risque vraiment majeur pour la stabilité et la démocratie. Finalement, toute cette analyse se résume à cette seule question, qui est très puissante, sur la nature du pouvoir et sa transmission. La différence entre les 2 termes est fondamentale. Un successeur légitime, il tire son autorité du peuple. Un héritier désigné, lui, il la tire uniquement du dirigeant qui était là avant. La question, elle, reste ouverte.
That's essentially why this conversation is crucially important. Leopold, thank you for putting that together. It's a way for us to break down the situation for people to understand it. and we actually have it as well in English. I think we should have the similar analysis in
We
English,
should. Then I have a question for Bernard.
that so that we can just a moment. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay, maybe after this.
Should.
Hey everyone, so today we're diving into a really big shift happening in Cameroon's constitution, the creation of a vice president. Now, this is the first major shakeup to the country's power structure in more than 25 years. But the big question is, does this move actually secure the nation's future, or does it maybe open the door to a whole new kind of power grab? Let's get into it. You know, this question isn't just a thought experiment. How a country handles the sudden absence of its leader, well, that's one of the ultimate tests of its constitutional strength. It's a moment of pure vulnerability, right? And the rules that are in place can be the one thing that separates a smooth, stable transition from a full-blown national crisis. So to really get what's going on here, we're going to break this whole proposal down. We'll start with what this new vice president role is all about, see how it stacks up against the old rules, and then we're going to dig into some really surprising details and contradictions that could honestly change everything. All right, so the big headline is the creation of a vice president. And this is a huge deal. It's the first major reform like this since 1996. But to really get why this change is being made, we first have to look at how things have been working up until now. Okay, so under the Constitution as it stands today, there's a pretty clear plan for an emergency. If the presidency suddenly becomes vacant for whatever reason, the system is designed to do two things: find a temporary leader, and then really quickly get power back to the people. And this slide really shows you the core difference. Right now, if the president is out of the picture, the head of the Senate steps in temporarily. Their one job? Organize a new election within 4 months. Simple. But the new proposal, it completely gets rid of the election. The vice president would just step in and finish the term. So we're shifting from a temporary democratic fix to a permanent appointed one. And that's where the questions really start to pile up. Okay, now let's start peeling back the layers of this proposal, because when you actually look at the wording in the bill, you find the first major surprise. This supposedly critical role of vice president, well, it might not even exist. The entire key is in one tiny word. The bill says the president may be assisted by a vice president, not shall be. That one word, may, makes the whole position optional. It is completely up to the president to decide if they even want a VP in the first place. And this, of course, immediately raises some pretty serious questions. If the job is optional, can the country just go on forever without a VP? And, I mean, the biggest question of all, why would you build your entire presidential succession plan around a job that could be completely empty at the one moment you need it most? This creates a huge risk, what some analysts are calling a programmed institutional vacuum. And that's really just a fancy way of saying the system is being designed with a potential black hole right at its center. If there's no VP when the president leaves office, the law isn't clear on what to do next. That creates chaos right when you need clarity the most. But okay, let's just say the president does decide to appoint a vice president. What does this person actually do? What kind of power do they have? Let's dig in a little deeper. The whole process is actually surprisingly simple. And that simplicity reveals a lot. The vice president has no inherent powers written into the Constitution. Zero. None. They can only use the powers that the president personally decides to delegate to them, probably on a case-by-case basis. So their authority is completely 100% dependent on the president. This comparison really puts it all into perspective. Just look at the role of the VP right next to a minister of state. Appointed by the president? Check. Dismissed by the president? Check. Powers delegated by the president? Check. I mean, they're basically the same job. It makes the VP look a lot less like a powerful second in command and a lot more like a glorified assistant. And this all leads to another major risk. You could have a person with a mostly symbolic job, with no real executive experience, who is suddenly thrust into the position of head of state during a crisis. The source material calls this a dangerous institutional rupture, and you can kind of see why. So all of this brings us to what might be the most complex and critical flaw that analysts have identified in this whole bill. It seems that hidden inside the text are not one, but two different and totally conflicting succession plans. Let's break this down, because it's a bit wild. On one hand, if there is a VP in office, they take over and just finish the term. No election needed. But on the other hand, if there isn't a VP, then the old rules suddenly kick back in. The Senate president becomes a temporary leader and an election has to be held. So the exact same event, the presidency becoming vacant, triggers two completely different constitutional processes. That is a recipe for a massive legal crisis. And to really understand what's at stake here, just think about this number, 6. If a president dies just 1 year into their 7-year term, their hand-picked vice president, someone the public never, ever voted for, could end up governing for the next 6 years. This just raises this huge question about the democratic deficit in this new system. And check this out. Here's a massive legal loophole. The current constitution has really strict limits on what a temporary interim president can do. For example, they can't change the constitution and they can't run for president themselves. But those same rules, they aren't clearly applied to a vice president who takes over. And this means an unelected official could actually end up with more unchecked power than an elected one. So when we put all these pieces together, an optional role, a job with no real power, and two conflicting succession plans, it all boils down to one fundamental question. What is this new vice president really? So here's a quick rundown of the core problems we've just walked through. First, the job is optional, which creates inconsistency. Second, the person isn't elected, which creates a democratic deficit. Third, they could govern for years without anyone's vote. Fourth, key safeguards that apply to other leaders are missing. And fifth, the whole thing is built on two succession plans that completely contradict each other. And that brings us to these two key definitions. You've got a legitimate successor, that's someone whose authority comes from the people, usually through an election. And then you have a designated heir. Their authority doesn't come from the people. It comes directly from the person they're replacing. And this, right here, is the question at the very heart of this whole debate. Given that the vice president is appointed, not elected, and basically serves at the pleasure of the president, does this constitutional reform truly create a legitimate democratic successor? Or does it, in effect, create a designated heir? The answer to that question is going to define the future of Cameroon's entire political landscape.
It's it sums it all that I hear as opposed to a potential successor and for the country. And that's the tragedy that we face. But I know before we went into this analysis, you had a question for Bernard, and after that, we're going to bring in Eric into the conversation, because we want to start looking forward now from what has been done. So, Elia, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, Bernard, I wanted to say, first off, I love that you started by saying that we shouldn't look back, sort of, but this is it's looking at the reality, and I want to say what we can do. There's an opportunity, is what I heard you say. There's an opportunity here. Because I've been trying not to be discouraged. I think that you could go on the dark side, and saying, oh my goodness, what do we do now? Because it's like we were already in a bad situation, and then now we're actually, it's getting worse. It's being institutionalized, it is getting worse. So I guess my question to you is, and Leopold said, this is not a quick fix. We do agree with that, because this problem was not brought here overnight. And, one thing, and I need to know what you think about this, because I have so many questions. I'm trying to narrow them down. The one thing that I wanted to ask is how, I don't want to say how did we get here, because we understand. I feel like we got democracy, and it was, I want to say we were immature. It was new to us. And so it was new to our awareness. Does that make sense? They always say, when is a good time to plant a tree? It's right now. So I'm not going back to regret, but I'm saying, what went wrong with us? I feel like other countries can rise up, you understand? And just one thing will happen and people really show up. What is the thing?
I think what went wrong with us was not our awareness. We are totally aware. We know what is happening and we are on spot. Cameroonians are on spot. Cameroonians know what is happening. If you go back 1992 elections, Cameroonians were aware, they voted and they supported Frundi and it was taken away. And then after that, participation started dying. So what is missing is not the awareness, it is the participation. And that participation was carefully designed, or the stick that brought down the participation is carefully designed by Yaoundé, by Paul Biya and the regime. And how did they do this? First of all, in 1992, they saw that the elections were really bad for them. So they started putting in systems to hold that electoral system down so that no other person can win the elections. And they started by paying out, using state resources to buy out political opponents. Remember, the opposition had a majority in parliament at some point, but they had to pay some of them off to align with the CPDM. And it opened the floodgates for them to use the money to pay our opposition leaders. Then they continue to narrow down the media space. Cameroonians are aware of everything that is happening, but they cannot talk about it. Because you talk about it, you are in prison. So what was the obvious consequence? Most Cameroonians who could left Cameroon, and the others who are there, they want to leave. And once out, you are not thinking about solving the problems that you left. You are thinking about surviving and making a living. And then those who are out, once the government notices that you're already surviving and you can make a position or you can take a stance or you can get involved, they start looking for ways to co-opt you. So I think it all boils down to government change in strategy up to this point. Mm-hmm. The SDF, may God rest Frundi's soul, tried for a long time to bring in reforms that could help bring change. Mm-hmm. But the government kept curtailing. And the worst part of it is that this regime is very good at divide and rule. They come into your party, they break it up into pieces. They come into the civil society movement, they break it up into pieces. You start fighting each other and forget about fighting the cause of your problems. That is where the problem is. And this awareness is what we need to center on. Because if we focus on this as the main problem, we would definitely have a way out. How do we stay together? Because the regime's biggest strategy is divide and rule. They would use money, they would use the media, and they will use military force. So those of us who are outside, we have an opportunity. Our gatherings cannot be stopped. What they can do at this point is using the divide and rule strategy, paying off some who align with us or who align with the movement for change or with the movement for a new vision for Cameroon. They will pay them off, but they will leave them within the fold so that, the friction, you fight amongst yourselves. But that is always going to be there, and that has always caused constant suspicion on within all movements. But how do we beat that? Is difficult to beat. So, but the majority always wants that movement towards the right direction. And it's very important that we think of strategies of keeping ourselves together for a new Cameroon, for a good vision for Cameroon. And also, they are very good at collaborating with foreign governments. They would prefer to use money that they could use in building schools to pay lobby firms abroad, so that those lobby firms do their bidding in foreign capitals.
So Bernard, let me ask you this next question. This I think you just hit it right where it needs to be, because I think that many times we get together and we have these philosophical discussions, and it is time for us to be extremely practical. And the practical is all has to be backed with CTA. We have to have a call of action for everything. And so when we look ourselves at this diaspora, by now, and this is something we can form, are we having a quarterly meeting? Remember how we used to have I think it was called CAMSA? Was it CAMSA? There's like a Cameroonian organization that used to be in the US. I can't remember the name, I'm so sorry. But I don't know if you remember, maybe it was called CAMSA.
It was CAMSA, that was the student.
So it was a video, but it was called CAMSA. Anyways, so the CAMSA was a Cameroonian student association. Other than soccer, it was the one thing that really united the diasporans, irrespective of what I was feeling in Cameroon. And we all got together, and those were in the early days, whatever they were. And that has dissipated. But as you know, the scholarship starts coming or whatever, for whatever reason. But I'm saying right now, sort of like the CAMSA, you know, talking about division, there should be a sense we should have, you know, really, it's called a call to action. Have a body of all Cameroonians, and it doesn't matter how it starts, it could be with 2 people, and having meetings regularly, because we should have this level of awareness. Otherwise, I feel like it just disappears because we're getting so caught up. You know, I get caught up in my life, and there's a lot going on in my life. So and so it is for many people. So where is it that we can congregate as a people? I feel that that may sound really mild, but it's one thing. So my question to you then is, as we get together, how do we move forward right now? What is it that, how can we take over? Because I feel like the question, Bernard, is on the diaspora right now. When we look at all these different countries where they have created things that has really changed what is happening in their country, it's almost like we're nowhere, and we're proud to not be involved. You know, people say, you know, I'm not concerned, you know? So I wonder what's your take on that?
I just believe, like I said, we need to come together. And how do we come together?
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the beginning of the Project C town halls, we used to have lots of people showing up, and the WhatsApp forums are quite active. That was because people were expecting a quick fix during the elections, and that did not happen, of course. But then, what do we need to do? I think there is a need to have a strategy that looks at the future in different steps, a short-term and a long-term strategy. Like you rightly said, it's absolutely difficult to really bring people together without sacrificing a lot, because people have their daily lives they are running about. So there is a need.
Bernard, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to drop this in there. Like you said also, and I think you said that so well, we have been trained to be disunited. It is so subliminal that we were not even aware. And now, instinctively, if I see somebody speak a certain way, I want to identify them as they're Betty, they're from here, this person is South. I mean, we are inclined, whereas most other countries first think of themselves as the country. But it's so against nature that this is the way we think now. And I think that has further also eroded this sense of being together and make it more difficult. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So,
Bernard, s'il te plaît, je voudrais rapidement dire quelque chose là pour Elie, avant que tu continues, je t'en prie. Pourquoi est-ce que le sentiment de division est plus marqué pour nous qui sommes au Cameroun que pour vous qui êtes à l'étranger? Vous, dans la diaspora, vous vous réunissez un tout petit peu plus facilement que nous. Je ne dis pas qu'il n'y a pas de division, mais tout ça, pourquoi? C'est pour dire que la corruption est quelque chose de terrible. C'est-à-dire que, Bernard, il faut qu'on pense au futur, c'est vrai, mais penser au futur, ça suppose que les gens ont une certaine aisance. Je dis minimum matériel. Or, divide and rule, c'est très facile de le faire en supprimant les ressources. Quand quelqu'un est obligé de chercher à voir ce qu'il va manger demain matin, ce que sa famille va manger demain, il lui est difficile de penser à ce qui va se passer dans 1 mois ou dans 2 mois. Et on entretient cela. Ce qui fait qu'il est difficile de mobiliser des gens. Mais par contre, tous ceux qui sont relativement à l'aise sont vraiment outillés pour pouvoir, sont plus à l'aise pour pouvoir aussi penser au futur, au devenir. C'était juste un petit détail parce que vraiment la corruption, c'est terrible. La cupidité. Et donc les gens se mettent ensemble pour voir ce que ça peut leur apporter à eux individuellement.
Well, I think, just not to digress too much, Leopold, I think that's true. But also remember that the travelers are more sympathetic because, when you leave your country and all you know, and you go to another, there's a tendency to be more unified because when you look at the people you can relate to, you are going to be relating to the people you share the most experiences with. So that's the first thing. In order for you to survive, we usually come here because we usually come here because I'm sorry, I'm very distracted with the noise. Yeah, background. Yeah, it's a lot of noise. Okay, please mute yourself. So anyways, the point I'm making is that it's true. We have already been, ganged or imprisoned in Cameroon in a way. And so you have to survive. Besides everything, you have to survive. So that survival mentality, I think it's so sad that people are really reduced to this animalistic instincts, I would say. But it's almost natural because you're going to have to survive. That's why you keep people in that state. It perpetuates, But on this side, it's not because there's not corruption, maybe not as bad, but I think that we galvanize. Usually it's the connections where people gather together and the people who are similar. So it's easier for us to be together.
Ouais, c'est vrai. Et vraiment, très, très brièvement, le paradoxe dans ce que tu dis, c'est que ici au Cameroun, vraiment, ce n'est pas exagéré de le dire, la population est métissée à au moins 65-70%.
What I've been coming to believe, Leopold, is that it's so sad because it's like when you're just hit with so many different things, it's hard for you to think through. Are you with me? And I'm beginning to believe that is by design because, like Bernard said, first we work on division, and truly this government or president is a master at it. Like if there's one thing they've done very well, that's what they've done. They've taken the worst of the colonial masters, and that's the best that they have afforded us. And so this is how it's been trained. And without knowing, we have elected ourselves into the system. And we actually made this bigger because we have worked on division ourselves as Cameroonians. And now when people are left in such abstract poverty, like the majority of the country, they cannot survive. And so then what happens is that the opportunities are not there. So there's this animalistic instinct. What I find very interesting is I don't know what value we give to life when people could just be killed at home, or even how numb we are. This whole thing about Mr. Ekane was very amazing to me because I thought the entire country will be out, but that is exactly the control that they've had.
J'ai interrompu Bernard qui voulait te répondre effectivement là-dessus.
Sorry, yes.
Bernard,
so
please,
I'm going to go back.
Bernard,
I know we
Bernard,
can't stop and we need to get back to other people, but Bernard, please, I need to, yes, because we just want a solution. What is it that we can do?
I think it's just necessary to leave from here and think about how to bring people together. Project C has done it before, and I think Project C has a certain level of credibility that both political actors, non-political actors, and the diaspora can listen to Project C. There are other organizations that Project C can collaborate with to reach out. I know that Project C's face has become I don't know what you think, but most people will be seeing Project C as a Tchiroma aligned movement. So on that grounds, it may be difficult to hook up with other organizations or other movements, but bringing Cameroonians in the diaspora together is mandatory. And personally, I think such a meeting should be physical. And from there, we can continue virtually. Physical, because when people meet face to face, they share a lot of what they don't share behind the screens. You know, that emotional reaction, you look somebody into his eyes and you can detect if this is somebody you should trust or not. So I think that meeting together and coming out with a way forward is important. And Project C, I don't know the management operations at the moment, but we need to have that on the ground as a strategy that defines the short and the long terms. At some point, immediately after the presidential elections, we were talking about the municipal and legislatives. They moved that now we don't even know if it's ever going to hold. So the question at this point is, if we have to rally around specific issues, then the regime would continue playing Cameroonians like chess. But if we want to rally for the vision of the country, for the vision of Cameroonians, for the prosperity of the country and Cameroonians, at this moment, Project C should identify like-minded organizations, collaborate with them, and do everything possible to pull what I would call a Cameroonian diasporan conference, at least sometime out. Give time for people to prepare, to plan, and be there, irrespective of whether spoilers are going to attend. But everybody, it should be open to everybody, working groups in a way that there could be something solid out of that. And that does not only bring Cameroonians together, it sends a strong message. It tells Yaoundé that Cameroonians can mobilize. Because I interviewed Professor Dr. Munzu after the elections, and I asked him, from his experience in Côte d'Ivoire, when Laurent Gbagbo won the elections and Ouattara came over, does he see that Tchiroma's presence as at now can have that kind of effect? He told me when he looks around, he doesn't see that mobilization. So most viewers in the comments section were not happy with that comment, but that was his honest analysis or impression of the issue. And months after, we see that he was right. And Yaoundé might have also had such an impression or such an analysis to the extent that they pushed President Tchiroma out of the country, and we see the consequences. So mobilization is important, and that starts now. We can move on to have that physical meeting from where mobilization goes forward. Right. Let me leave you with this. When we had Dr. Christopher Fomunyo here, he said movements or citizens would only survive if they have 4 pillars ready. The first pillar was media, the second was finances, the third was international relations, and the fourth was military. And he clarified, and I agree with him, that we don't even need the military. If we put these first 3 together, the military would come to join us, because the military is there for us and the military is part of us. Thank you.
So much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really would like for us to open the conversation now so that we can have audience participation. But before that, I'm going to bring in Eric Chinjay, who has been observing what is happening both in Cameroon and the numerous conversations and videos that we've used today to educate the audience. And at this critical moment that we're thinking, you know, only yesterday, it was a debate of whether this was possible, whether this would even happen. And today, it is no longer one of doubt. It is what is happening. And what obviously becomes the conversation that is open now to the Cameroonian people is, where do we go from here? What must we do so that when we celebrate Easter Sunday tomorrow, it is the beginning of the resurrection of a new Cameroon? I'll turn this over to you, Eric.
Well, thank you, Are. And as you say, I've been monitoring this, and for once, I was a viewer, you know, looking at how this is playing out, and it was quite informative. So thank you all so much. There are a number of people in the, you know, I know there are over 1,000 views of people watching the program right now on various platforms, which I think is great. I just checked that, and I realized, you know, that there are so many people watching. But there are those who are here in the Zoom who I hope would be able to just say one thing before we round up. And I'm thinking about a number, you know, I know Benjamin Dongan is here. Benjamin, j'espère que vous allez quand même dire un petit mot avant de partir. There's Reverend Epa, who's also in Germany. Benjamin is in Cameroon. The Reverend Epa is in Elad is in is in Germany. And then there is le Dr. James Medou. J'espère que James est là et qu'il va quand même dire quelque chose rapidement sur cette grande question, mais c'est la semaine prochaine qu'il y aura tout le temps pour développer sa pensée là-dessus. Et il y a aussi Jean-Marie Watonsi qui est dans le groupe. J'aimerais que Jean-Marie dise quelque chose. And of course, there's Terence and a number of others who may want to speak, Kenneth and so on. I think, my hope is that we can generalize the discussion, just give everybody a few minutes to say what they think, because this is we're at a turning point.
We are at a turning point.
I am hoping that what is happening in the assembly today will be the trigger that we've been all waiting for. If it doesn't trigger change in Cameroon, I don't know what else can. So I'm really hoping that we can use it. And there are too many people who are angry. A lot was said in Parliament today. Mr. René Zengele, for those who may remember that name, René Zengele used to be a minister in Nahijo's time, and under Biya, he's a parliamentarian now, and he stood up and he spoke against what is happening. He said, this cannot be real. We cannot treat a foundational document like a constitution, a foundational document, as if it were a piece of paper that could be, you could write upon, tear up at any moment. In a constitution, you cannot speak of an office, vice president, in the conditional. It may or may not. It doesn't happen. So it was ill prepared. It was prepared in a hurry, and was prepared by a group of people who want to protect their own interests. If you don't understand that about this constitutional change, then you've not understood the first thing about it. So it's important that we have to do whatever it takes to make sure the word in French is garbage. This elevation of mediocrity does not reflect our country, the country we are proud of. We've got to make sure it happens. And, there was the other people still speaking in Parliament as I speak now, condemning what has happened. It's not even, we cannot even elevate this to we cannot treat it as a constitutional coup d'etat. It's weaker than that, but it's even more destructive than a coup d'etat. Think about this. There are some who say, it should be an Anglophone who should be appointed vice president. Will this resolve the Anglophone crisis? Will this even begin to address the problems of that community? There is the likelihood that it might even be Frank Biya. When I was told this, I said, no, absolutely not. But when you see a weak clause in the Constitution that says the president may or may not appoint a vice president, well, what stops him from appointing his son? If he decides that that's what's best, in their best interest. This is totally tailored to address the problem of the people who control power today. To make sure that whoever is decided upon, I've heard the name of young Philemon, they say, he's weak, he's a weak Anglophone that can come and make sure that things happen the way they should happen. Let's not bring in John Gute. Let's take a young Philemon. Let's take a weak Anglophone who can come in and make things happen. Look, Mr. Yang is not a weak person. I'm not saying this to reflect that. He's not. But that's the calculation of the group that is trying to make sure that this thing passes, and it has passed. If the rest of us, the people, the sovereign Cameroonians, accept it, then we are the architects of our own failure. So as I said, I hope this would be the trigger for change. We cannot accept that this should be this should be a constitution. As a matter of fact, Cameroon is, a lot of people are laughing at, externally, out of the country. They can't understand what's going on in Cameroon, so Cameroon has become something of a laughing stock. Yeah. This constitution will make that even worse.
Yeah.
It will make it even worse. You can't even develop a constitution. You don't even understand. You don't even know what a constitution is. I want to ask every single member of parliament who authorized this. Do you know what a constitution is? Do you know how foundational it is? Can you build your house on sand? Because this is equivalent to a piece of sand. And the one question we're not asking, nobody seems to be asking, is where is Mr. Paul Biya? Is he around? Is he alive? Or is this being done so that they'll announce somebody and then tomorrow we'll find out Mr. Biya is totally incapacitated, if not already with his maker? This is a possibility. If Mr. Biya is at this moment totally incapacitated, he will not be there for May 20th. He may not be there. He will not be there to receive the Pope. The Pope will go to see him. We don't know what the Pope is going to see. So there are all of these. We can't treat the country like this. We cannot treat our country like this. So every member of parliament, if you respect Cameroon, please rethink every action you're taking. You still have tomorrow to, or go out and tell the rest of the world, tell the press, tell your family that this was all a joke. This was all a joke. Having said that, let me just call on a few friends who are with us today. I hope Mr. Medu would want to say something about the nation Cameroon that we're trying to build and why this constitution is such an important piece of that agenda. Any constitution, but this constitution. Do you want to see if, I know James is around because I saw JM. Est-ce que Monsieur le Docteur Medu est là? Est-ce qu'il peut prendre la parole? And once we wait for him, there's also, I'll ask Jean-Marie Watonsi, who's also there. Elizabeth, Ari, I don't know, how do we manage this?
What is best to do is that if you're ready to speak, unmute yourself and come on camera. If possible, that will be the best way. And then we can bring you up. That's good. And if you're not speaking, please don't unmute yourself because it could be really distracting for somebody who is speaking. And if and then it's better to, bring you up front. Otherwise, you can still speak from where you are and just unmute yourself. So yeah, I think that would be the best way.
Okay.
I don't know. It's Jean-Marie Watonsi.
Voilà.
Is he?
Oui. Yeah, he's there.
Okay. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Okay.
Merci.
Okay, let me go ahead and put him on. Okay, very good. Okay.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai écouté tout le monde là dans les discussions assez intéressantes. Et comme disaient certains, je crois que l'heure maintenant, c'est de réfléchir sur les stratégies et de trouver les solutions qui nous permettent d'éduquer le peuple et d'amener le peuple à aller dans le sens du refus total de ce qui est en train de se passer à l'Assemblée nationale. Et puis, il y a même déjà cette brèche ouverte par René Zenguele, déjà, membre du Rassemblement démocratique du peuple camerounais, qui nous donne l'opportunité ici de dire non, tout comme il l'a fait, et de trouver des stratégies. Et pour moi, entre autres stratégies, il faut la communication. La communication, c'est vrai, c'est pas évident, on ne pourrait jamais passer par CRTV pour le faire, mais il y a quand même des journaux au pays qui pourraient, si nous rédigeons un communiqué pour leur dire notre refus d'une telle approche, qu'ils peuvent diffuser ce type de communiqué. Et d'un. Et de deux, on a parlé de toutes les associations des Camerounais dans la diaspora. On pourrait aussi rédiger, n'est-ce pas, des lettres et essayer d'aller vers ces associations, les rencontrer et leur dire la nécessité de participer à de telles réunions. Il n'est plus question ici d'avoir une approche partisane, non. Nous sommes tous Camerounais du nord au sud, de l'est à l'ouest, que nous l'expliquions à chacun qui pense comme nous, n'est-ce pas, ou alors même qui ne pense pas comme nous, qu'on présente un dossier qui amène tous ces Camerounais de la diaspora à se mettre ensemble pour la cause de cette nation que nous aimons tous. Parce qu'il ne faudrait pas se leurrer. Nous allons passer, mais le Cameroun va rester. Mais quel Cameroun est-ce que nous allons laisser, n'est-ce pas, à la postérité? Ça, c'est de notre responsabilité aujourd'hui. Il va donc falloir que, comme j'ai dit, que nous écrivions des communiqués que nous pourrions envoyer dans les églises au Cameroun, dans les mosquées, même si les pasteurs, les imams ne lisent pas ça, mais l'histoire retiendra que ce groupe, nous l'avons fait, qu'on envoie dans les journaux pour publication, et puis qu'on contacte les associations avec un retour au centre ici pour leur dire, bon, moi j'ai contacté l'association, je leur ai parlé de cette réunion, voilà ce que l'association pense, et ils ont envoyé 2 ou 3 membres pour notre débat. Comme ça, on va avancer. Parce que si nous restons là à toujours revenir sur ce qui s'est passé, sur ce qui nous a conduit à ce point, on va pas avancer. Maintenant, c'est l'heure des solutions. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait concrètement? Et j'ai donné deux solutions. Je crois qu'on pourrait partir de là pour bâtir, n'est-ce pas, un ensemble de solutions et voir comment est-ce qu'on peut diffuser, n'est-ce pas, ces solutions pour régler ce problème. Mais il va falloir que notre voix se fasse entendre, qu'on dise non, et que le non se fasse entendre. Voilà. Je vous remercie.
Absolument. Merci beaucoup à Jean-Marie, c'est extraordinaire cette proposition et on va en parler dans les jours qui viennent pour voir complètement. Ça rejoint un peu ce que Bernard disait et je crois que qui retrouve aussi une proposition que Project C avec Arrêt, Elisabeth, Léopold et moi, on commençait déjà à préparer. Donc, merci beaucoup. On va se donner la main et voir dans quelle mesure nous pouvons réaliser cela. Alors, est-ce que, Léopold, essaie de voir si monsieur le docteur Medou peut nous...
Je le relance parce qu'en fait, j'étais surpris qu'il soit connecté parce qu'il a un enterrement. Il a une cousine qu'il est venu enterrer ici à Yaoundé. Je le relance et puis...
Benjamin est là.
Oui, Benjamin en ligne. Donc, si Benjamin peut se connecter parce que il a eu à faire quelques interventions dans ce sens-là sur les plateaux de télévision et cela pourrait être intéressant qu'il les partage ici. Voilà, Benjamin en ligne, il est là.
He's up on camera?
Yeah, he is already on camera. Already.
Oh, very good. Hi, Benjamin. Let me put you on.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, hello.
J'espère que vous entendez.
Yes.
Oui. Non, merci. J'écoute depuis tout à l'heure. Effectivement, j'étais très intéressé d'entendre les anciens aussi nous dire comment, pardon, il y a un peu de bruit autour de moi, ça va passer. Comment ils reçoivent ça parce que, bon, nous, parfois, les jeunes, on se dit qu'on vit tout à 100 à l'heure, alors qu'il y a des choses qui se sont déjà passées avant et c'est bien d'avoir aussi cette expérience. Non, pour moi, et je pense que c'est partagé. Il y a 2 choses que je voulais partager ici. Premièrement, je crois que j'ai entendu, effectivement, Léopold a dit qu'il faut qu'on travaille tout le temps long. Mais moi, j'ai peur que la nouvelle génération, celle qui est encore plus jeune que moi, se trouve ça un peu difficile. Et il faut qu'on soit créatif pour trouver les moyens de maintenir une mobilisation et l'espoir. Parce que j'entends des gens dire comme si l'espoir n'est plus là. Ce n'est pas simplement des gens qui ne trouvent plus de travail, qui partent. On voit des gens qui avaient un travail ici, mais qui partent et qui veulent partir ailleurs parce qu'ils ne se réalisent plus, ils ne s'imaginent plus dans le Cameroun. Donc, un des travaux importants que des personnes engagées dans ce civil, dans les partis politiques, pour moi, devront faire, c'est trouver la façon de maintenir cet espoir que, malgré tout ce rouleau compresseur, on doit quand même pouvoir y arriver, on doit quand même pouvoir se dire que ce n'est pas fini. moi, ce que je dis souvent, c'est que, on l'a encore vu récemment, ce pouvoir est déterminé à se maintenir en place. Et s'il n'a pas en place une détermination équivalente de gens, ça ne changera pas. Donc, il faut qu'ils sentent qu'il y a des Camerounais, vous pouvez les marcher dessus, vous pouvez les écraser, ils seront là. Dans notre contexte, je suis toujours extraordinairement surpris de la résistance, ou la capacité à résister d'un peuple comme les Palestiniens qui, en 40 ans, on les a bombardés, on les a envoyés les chars, mais ils sont toujours là. Ils reconstruisent, ils se placent toujours devant le peuple israélien en disant « Oui, nous sommes là, nous allons exister, il restera un seul de nous. » Je crois qu'on doit avoir cette mentalité-là de nous dire « Personne d'autre ne viendra. There's no one coming from us. » On doit se sauver. Ce sont des Camerounais qui nous ont mis dans cette situation. Donc, nous devons trouver des solutions. Et c'est difficile, mais on doit sortir de là. La difficulté aussi de la condition. Parce que beaucoup, peut-être parce que leur quotidien n'est pas encore comme ils l'imaginent, vont se dire, bon, tant que je n'ai pas assuré mon petit quelque chose, je ne veux pas faire grand-chose. Alors qu'ils sont conscients justement que même si on n'a pas beaucoup de moyens, on peut faire des choses. Moi, j'ai vu des jeunes se mobiliser pendant les dernières élections qui n'ont pas grand-chose, mais ils ont trouvé dans les personnes qui supportaient quelqu'un qui leur redonnait envie de croire que c'est possible. Et même sans grands moyens, ils venaient, ils participaient au meeting, ils arrangeaient, ils portaient, ils faisaient quelque chose et ils contribuaient à leur façon. Donc, il faut qu'on ait cette énergie et qu'on ait la même détermination qu'on voit en face des autres, ceux qui veulent s'accrocher là, pour leur dire, vous allez être délogés de là. Un autre aspect sur lequel il va falloir insister ces prochains jours, et dans le travail think tank, et là que Project C peut être très utile, c'est rappeler aux uns et aux autres la différence entre l'égalité et légitimité. Le parti au pouvoir et le régime est très fort pour parler de l'égalité. On a même fait de ça la marque de fabrique du président de la République. Non, c'est un légaliste. Il ne fait jamais les choses qui ne sont pas dans la loi. Oui, mais la légitimité précède la légalité. Quelle légalité pouvons-nous avoir si elle n'a pas été faite par des personnes qui sont légitimes? Le peuple accepte de céder ou de se contraindre à des lois parce qu'il a donné mandat à des personnes qui sont non légitimes pour faire pour prendre ces lois-là et les contraindre quelque part. À partir du moment où vous n'avez plus la légitimité, comment vous pouvez vous engager dans des transformations aussi importantes? Donc, c'était si important de revoir le système de succession du président, et il n'en parle pas du tout pendant l'élection présidentielle, pendant la campagne qu'il vient de faire. C'était si important de créer une nouvelle administration, un nouveau vice-président avec toutes ses voitures, ses secrétaires, etc. Et on en parle du budget qu'on vote en décembre 2025, alors que ça va se passer en 2026. C'est accepté. Ils ont joué parce qu'on ne sort pas du flou sans perdre un peu dans ses options. Donc, vous êtes obligé d'assumer maintenant que, un, on a un système qui, depuis 43 ans, n'est toujours pas sûr de sa succession. Et deux, on ne fait pas grand cas de ce que vous, les Camerounais, vous pensez, parce qu'on a décidé que le mode d'amener quelqu'un au pouvoir dans notre pays sera maintenant décidé par un acte administratif. Et on met même le possible, on met ça au possible, c'est-à-dire si le président veut, il désigne, s'il veut, il ne désigne pas. Même dans la monarchie, la succession, c'était quasiment la première chose qu'on demandait à un roi dès qu'il prenait le pouvoir, il fallait qu'il trouve, he has to find the heir, sinon le royaume n'allait pas bien.
Yeah.
Et vous dites,
Yeah.
c'est pas si grave, si le président veut, il nomme le vice-président, s'il veut, il ne nomme pas le vice-président.
Benjamin, dans le même ordre d'idée, même dans nos villages en Afrique, le roi désigne d'abord secrètement son successeur et on le rangeait ailleurs, on le protégeait ailleurs parce que sachant que le successeur est connu, on pouvait l'éliminer.
Et tu vois, Léopold, ce qui m'embête, je suis déçu que beaucoup de nos dirigeants traditionnels se soient laissés embarquer dans la corruption administrative parce que c'est dans ces moments-ci qu'on avait besoin de personnes qui peuvent nous apporter et ça pourrait être la vraie différence africaine. Moi, je vois la force.
But Benjamin, this has been eroded. That was the thing, but yes. It's not some overnight. It has been eroded over time where we don't even realize until something like this happens and we can't move. We just don't have the normal human instincts in reaction because it has been eroded.
Definitely. Non, il faudra, ça c'est des choses, des ressorts sur lesquels on devra travailler parce que on avait besoin dans ce genre de moment justement que des personnes qui sont dépositaires d'un savoir lointain. On fait souvent comme si nos populations, nos peuples n'ont jamais su s'organiser. Guys, on a eu des siècles de royaumes, d'organisation sociale, de gestion de conflits, de gestion de succession. Et on vient nous faire croire que non, ça, tout ça a été effacé. On ne peut fonctionner qu'avec ce qu'on nous a laissé il y a 60 ans au moment de la colonisation. Bien sûr que non. Et bon, voilà, donc, la corruption a beaucoup enlevé, a beaucoup érodé dans notre façon dans les moyens qu'on pouvait, les outils qu'on pouvait utiliser, mais on doit les inventer les nouveaux. Et moi, je tiens voilà, à dire que
Benjamin, do you think,
la force, oui.
sorry, I want to ask you, do you think that, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Do you think that the task that is in front of us is overwhelming because we've been hit at the election is stolen, the constitution is just being read, so it's so overwhelming, and we can see the elders, the people who wear, they themselves are beaten. Are you with me? Even if they're positive, they are. So when you look back across generations, it is this same disillusionment. And so I am wondering if, and then you have the youth who are now taking charge. This election was an example of how they galvanized before, how Cameroonian people came out through the silence. People thought, and they came out, and then it was broken again. And it was not a fight, it was broken down. That's the danger. So my question to you is, the task that is in front of us, I mean, it just seems like an insurmountable mountain, for crying out loud. But can we do this? And yes, of course, the answer is yes. And now we have an in-between. We have a generation saying, let's take our time. And then we have the future belongs to the youth, okay? Who are saying, we're sick and tired. We don't want, so the first thing I think as we move forward, we should have a real conversation on both sides. The youth who owns the future, really, they're growing, it's them, they have a say. And I'm wondering, Benjamin, do you think that this youth is being listened to in this conversation? Do you think that they're galvanizing? They've done a lot. Look at TikTok, social media, look at what happened before, during the elections. It's on the youth. But I'm not saying in a bad way that they're being marginalized, but are we aware enough? Because culturally, we don't know how to send the youth ahead. Are you with me? So I'm just, this is real, good, honest conversation. So I'm asking you, do you think that we can use them? Oh yes, they're doing this, but are they being listened to? Are they being considered? Are their temperature being taken for? The instincts of the future belongs to them. What do you think?
Bon, je pense qu'ils ne se considèrent pas forcément toujours comme une partie de la solution parce qu'on ne leur a pas pris, on ne les a pas appris ou on ne les a pas habitués à être écoutés. Hein? Donc, moi, quand j'ai démarré Djangi News, je voulais absolument être sur TikTok parce que c'est là qu'il y a beaucoup de jeunes de 20 ans, 23 ans, moins de 25 ans. Et je me disais que si je fais Djangi News et que je parle seulement sur LinkedIn, là où il y a all the professionals, all the corporate guys, ça ne va pas être très utile parce qu'ils ont beaucoup d'autres moyens de s'informer sur ce genre de sujet. Et c'est bien fait parce que là-bas, sur TikTok ou même sur Facebook, il y a beaucoup de gens qui me disent à chaque fois dans les feedbacks, ils ne connaissaient pas ou ils ne savent pas, effectivement, ils ne comprenaient pas ceci, ils ne comprenaient pas cela. Donc, les jeunes s'excusent toujours parce qu'on les a habitués à ça. When they are important meeting, you should stay outside, fix the chairs, and then wait for the old people to talk and serious things. Non, on doit leur dire, nous sommes un pays, et c'est ça qui est terrible, on est un pays jeune. 70% de la population là, moins de 30 ans, même peut-être moins de 25 ans. Et vous allez être obligé de rentrer de plein pied dans la réalité, de prendre les choses en main. Même si demain, là, on ne sait pas, maintenant, avec les changements, là, combien de temps le président actuel va encore rester avec nous, mais the minute he's not here again with us, il va avoir un bouleversement. Et on risque de basculer dans une nouvelle génération, absolument.
Okay? Donc, les jeunes de 25 ans doivent être conscients que nous entrons dans une phase qui va être une phase de turbulence. Et on doit donc les accompagner dans ce cheminement-là pour qu'ils comprennent vraiment qu'il y a une histoire. Beaucoup de gens ont vu sur Anissé et Kane décédé, ils ne le connaissaient pas. Ils ne savent pas qu'est-ce qu'il a fait. On ne sait pas qu'est-ce qui s'est passé à son procès dans les années 90 avec Maître le bâtonnier Yondo Black. Ce n'est pas le travail qu'ils ont fait. Donc, il faut leur réapprendre ça, leur réapprendre qu'il y a eu une histoire. Personne, beaucoup ne savent même pas qu'on a déjà eu des vice-présidents au Cameroun. Et ils vont croire que c'est la première fois qu'on a un vice-président. Donc, we have to learn them and teach them this part. Et maintenant, donner les outils pour eux aussi s'exprimer avec leur code. Parce qu'il ne faut pas essayer de leur faire ce qu'on a déjà fait avant. Ils ont plein de façons différentes de s'exprimer aujourd'hui. J'ai trouvé des profils très, très, très originaux. Un jeune, notamment Junior Gombe, qui avait été arrêté parce qu'il parlait sur TikTok et il s'était plaint, il était dans un salon de coiffure, il s'était plaint, on l'a arrêté. Mais intervenir assez rapidement pour le faire sortir de là. Et il avait une capacité de mobilisation, j'ai trouvé sur TikTok, très originale. Et pendant la campagne d'élection présidentielle, depuis toute l'année 2025, il a beaucoup travaillé avec des lives. Donc, ils ont des codes, ils ont des choses qu'ils font aujourd'hui qui sont très utiles, qui pourront être utiles pour demain, pour se remobiliser. Mais il faut qu'on leur donne ce qui leur manque là, le lien pour leur rappeler d'où on part, qu'est-ce qu'on a déjà essayé, comment le régime en place a contré ou a essayé de contrer, de bloquer telle ou telle action. Et ça va les muscler, ça va les outiller pour pouvoir créer. C'est à eux d'inventer. Je dis eux parce que même moi, peut-être que je ne suis même pas ceux qui vont voir. Je ne vais peut-être pas voir le résultat de tout ce qu'on fait, mais je pense qu'il fallait être créatif. Il faut sortir des cours, des sentiers battus et accepter d'être innovant. Et il faut que les anciens aussi acceptent qu'on soit innovant, qu'on bouscule un peu. Je dis souvent aux anciens, même dans ma famille, moi, dès que j'ai commencé à apparaître à la télé, on m'a appelé du village, on m'a appelé, mais qu'est-ce que tu fais? Oh, pourquoi tu pars là-bas? Oh, la politique, c'est compliqué. Mais on doit aussi casser ce code-là. Hein? Moi, j'ai grandi en apprenant qu'il faut aller au marché, il ne faut pas aller faire la politique, parce que la politique, là, c'est compliqué. J'ai dit, non, moi, je ne peux pas arrêter. Moi aussi, je vois mes enfants grandir, mais not in these conditions. Je veux que mes enfants grandissent dans un pays où on est fier d'habiter. OK? Je veux pas qu'ils grandissent en ayant peur de parler du président.
Merci.
Merci. Notre pays on est trop propriétaire.
Ouais. Merci beaucoup. Je suis en train de regarder le chat ici et je vois qu'il y a des gens qui ont des idées aussi à partager. Je vais demander à Alain Gonon qui est là. Alain, si tu peux si tu dis quelque chose. Il y a Terence. Terence, I like what you said because you said something about the illegitimacy of this of the president. How can an illegitimate president appoint a vice president? And we have an assembly that has overstayed its welcome. These members of parliament should not even be members of parliament because they've not been subject to a re-election. And there are many of them who are not even around. Of the 180, there are those who died, there are those who who cannot. So the whole thing is just chaotic. Anyway, Alain, est-ce que tu as quelque chose à dire? Sinon, il faut allumer ton micro, s'il te plaît, Alain. Or Terence.
I think Terence is ready.
Oh, fantastic. Let's go, Terence.
Terence, you might just have to unmute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Terence.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are looking at debating with ourselves because the real president is out there. These are just side distractions. The question is, how do we even entertain such a thing? Are we in such a situation? Is the whole country 20 million adults? Let's say 10 million adults. Are those adults so much blindfolded that they cannot realize the difference between who they voted for and the people that are illegitimate making changes to what is going to be governing them? At the end of the day, we have to realize it, that whether you're being paid by the government, somehow money is coming from taxes, from your taxation, from your employment, from what you do, from what you transpire. And if you are not represented, then what do you expect? If you are not represented, then what do you expect? And, you know, these days we're talking about the Pope coming. We look at Christianity and people say, well, life is going to be good in heaven. Guess what? God made us to make sure that we enjoy life and we serve him here on earth. And we cannot be thinking about Christianity in its totality without coming to terms with the leaders that we have. You know, they are bad leaders in Christianity, but the people, let my people go, let my people go, let my people go. You know, the people have to wake up. The people asked Moses, why did you bring us out here? Cameroonians have to ask, why are we where we are? And if you cannot ask and you are just comfortable with what you earn today, then the question is, why do you really exist? Are you making this world a better place than you met it? Or are you making it worse than you met it? If you have kids, if you have grandkids, even you as an individual, when you get sick tomorrow, which hospital are you going to go to? And if you don't care about that, then that's okay. But at the end of the day, human beings are made and God has a purpose for us. The question is, what is your purpose? What is your purpose at this defining time when history will be written? We quote Mandela, we quote JFK, we quote this, we quote that. At the end of the day, they were all human beings like you and I. You know, Gandhi was just like anybody else. What can you as an individual wake up and do to ensure that tomorrow is a better day than today? There is death all over the streets everywhere. Douala, Yaoundé, that is not the country that any one of us grew up in. If we want to make it just a big pile of death, guess what? Even the recycling people don't want that death from Cameroon. Even the recycling people don't want the death from Cameroon. So even to sell that debt, we have to make it better. And it is not going to take one person. It is not going to take just one person that was voted into power. It takes everybody. It takes everybody, not including the people that want us down. We're still living in a colonial system. The problem is we are being colonized by our own brothers and sisters.
Thank you.
So let us wake up. Yeah. Let us wake up. And if you don't want to wake up, don't be in the way of people that want to wake up. Please don't be in the way of people that want to wake up. If you're okay with potholes and everything, stand in the pothole. But when they want to fix it, get out of the way. You know.
Thank you so much, Terence. I think it's well said, and I hope that message is well taken by everybody who's listening to us. And I'm sure Alain Gono will go along the same lines. Alain, I know you unmuted, so on to pass la parole, Alain. And I know you can do it in English or French. Come to you.
All right, thank you. Merci infiniment. Je ne sais pas, est-ce que je suis audible?
Oui, très bien.
Ok, parfait. Bonjour et bonsoir à tout le monde. La conversation que Project C a organisée aujourd'hui sur l'actualité de l'heure vient à point nommé. Et je me dis que ça arrive parce que dans la communauté humaine, et je pense que c'est ça qui nous différencie aussi un tout petit peu des autres êtres du règne animal, c'est que l'être humain a la capacité de pouvoir se souvenir du passé, pouvoir se souvenir de son histoire. avec un pays qui a bloqué la connaissance de notre passé, la connaissance de notre histoire, qu'il s'agisse de l'histoire politique, de l'histoire culturelle, de l'histoire économique, etc. C'est l'avenir même qui est totalement compromis. Je le dis parce que, en fait, la façon dont l'Assemblée nationale a procédé aujourd'hui de manière extrêmement brutale pour passer ces amendements constitutionnels, c'est le 14e amendement constitutionnel depuis que le Cameroun existe qui a été effectué aujourd'hui. Et cet amendement constitutionnel se déroule, je crois que le Cameroun a organisé sur les 14 une seule fois, sur les 14 amendements, une seule fois le référendum. Et le Cameroun a eu jusqu'à présent 2 chefs d'État. Et le chef d'État actuel est arrivé au pouvoir par nomination. Et il est arrivé à la tête de son parti politique, l'UNC d'abord, par nomination. Il est arrivé dans la fonction publique par nomination depuis 1962. Et donc, je rappelle rapidement ces différents événements pour souligner le fait que la culture du contrôle populaire, du respect de la souveraineté du peuple, ce sont des données qui lui sont totalement étrangères. Parce qu'après 60 ans de vie publique, et que tout cela s'est passé soit par des décrets, soit par des arrêtés, soit par des choix totalement échappants dont je crois au Cameroun on dit la discrétion du chef de l'État. Donc, il a procédé ainsi par discrétion, par décision, par nomination, par décret. Alors, si quelqu'un qui s'est bâti comme ça, il a passé toute sa vie d'adulte à l'ombre du contrôle populaire, à l'abri des méthodes de souveraineté et démocratique, qu'est-ce qu'on attend de lui à 93 ans quand il s'agit de procéder à une réforme constitutionnelle, à la 14e réforme constitutionnelle, alors que sur les 14, il n'y a qu'une seule qui a sollicité l'opinion des Camerounais. Le reste des réformes s'est effectué entre fonctionnaires, entre amis, entre copains, entre membres du même parti, etc., etc. Donc, je pense que certains Camerounais qui ont eu l'impression d'être un tout petit peu surpris par cette réalité, c'est parce que je crois que c'est Benjamin qui a un peu parlé de cette affaire-là tout à l'heure, cette continuité historique-là, cette transmission des savoirs, cette transmission des connaissances, cette culture citoyenne-là n'a jamais été encouragée. Au contraire, ça a été combattu. Parce que ce genre de procédé se fait, je crois que le précédent intervenant était un peu avec des références chrétiennes et autres là. Ce sont des procédés qui prospèrent dans l'ombre. Ce sont des procédés qui prospèrent, qui n'aiment pas la lumière. Tu ne peux pas décider de vouloir changer la Constitution avec des gens. Tu as décidé de proroger leur mandat. Tu as fait renouveler les régions avec des anciens conseillers municipaux. Donc, et puis maintenant, tu décides que, comme dans ton parti, il n'y a pas eu d'élection depuis 2015, comme depuis 1972, on n'a plus jamais eu de changement, de modification constitutionnelle en sollicitant l'opinion des Camerounais, tu vas continuer avec ton approche que tu penses que en fait, c'est la bonne approche puisque ça a toujours marché. Je crois que le moment est arrivé pour que les Camerounais disent que enough is enough. Ça, ce sont des approches qui ne sont pas des approches d'une république. Si c'est dans ta famille que tu veux gérer les choses ainsi, cela se comprendrait peut-être. Mais en république, tu ne peux pas faire exactement les méthodes antidémocratiques de ton parti politique, où il n'y a pas la seule personne qui a été élue, c'est toi. le reste des membres du comité central, du bureau politique, personne n'a été, enfin tous les mandats sont échus, il y a eu beaucoup de morts, il n'y a pas de remplaçants. Dans ton gouvernement, il y a beaucoup de morts, il n'y a pas de remplaçants. Aujourd'hui, on nous a dit, au Sénat, je crois, c'est 100 personnes, il y avait une 80aine. Le reste était des gens morts. Hein. Bon, non seulement ils sont à prolonger le mandat, il y a les morts, l'élection de la dernière élection a été volée, etc., etc. Tous ces éléments-là, tu bloques l'avenir de 30 millions de Camerounais à cause de ton obsession, de ta peur du peuple, de ta peur de la volonté populaire. Je crois que il y a ce travail de sensibilisation là qu'il faut qu'on fasse, qu'on mène, et c'est très important, en faisant un peu ces ponts-là, en expliquant aux gens que ces choses-là ne tombent pas du ciel. Moi, je suis ici à Yaoundé et je vous assure que c'est extrêmement difficile. Les gens pensent que, en fait, le changement pourrait venir du ciel en allant chez le pasteur le dimanche, en allant prier, ou bien en allant chez le marabout le vendredi, etc., etc. Ça, c'est... Il faut pouvoir expliquer aux gens les liens, leur donner les clés qui leur permettent de comprendre que si vous avez 180, dans une assemblée de 180 personnes et que 153 sont par exemple du RDPC et que ces 153 ont été désignés par le comité central et qu'ils ont été élus par l'appui des sous-préfets et des préfets, etc., élus entre guillemets, ne vous attendez pas à un miracle. Les miracles, ça arrive même en Israël. Israël ne croit pas aux miracles. Israël compte d'abord sur ses missiles, sur ses bombes, sur son don de fer, etc., avant de dire que Dieu viendra nous aider. Pourtant, ils sont le peuple élu. Donc, je voudrais que ce travail de sensibilisation se poursuive, enfin, soit intensifié dès maintenant. Cela peut se faire par je crois que j'ai entendu quelqu'un qui parlait d'un think tank. Il faut une réflexion en profondeur, une réflexion qui est tournée vers l'action. C'est-à-dire que la recherche appliquée, nous avons besoin que la diaspora, par exemple, camerounaise, qu'elle se rassemble. J'ai entendu le président Kamto qui a dit qu'il va lancer une pétition. J'ai entendu le président Issa Tchiroma qui a dénoncé cette modification constitutionnelle. J'ai vu que les avocats, le barreau, a contesté, a dénoncé cette modification de la Constitution. Il faut des efforts concertés. Partis politiques, société civile, les jeunes, les bensikina, les vendeurs, tout le monde peut bien comprendre cette affaire si on leur explique que ce n'est pas possible. Même dans la famille du monsieur le président, il ne peut pas se lever comme ça, il décide sans la moindre consultation à tort et à travers. Donc, combien de fois une république de 30 millions de personnes et au regard de 30 années, de 43 années de gabégie, de mauvaise gouvernance, rien ne marche strictement ici au pays, rien ne marche. Rien ne marche. Nous ne pouvons pas compter, par exemple, sur l'avenir. Le pape ne va pas venir tous les ans pour qu'on puisse réflexionner rapidement quelques routes. Les routes, ici à Yaoundé, quelques routes ont pu bénéficier de la chance de voir leurs travaux être effectués parce que le pape vient. Ça, ce sont les démonstrations. Il faut pouvoir expliquer au peuple que dans une société normale, nous n'attendrons pas le pape pour retirer les déchets. Nous n'allons pas attendre le pape pour pouvoir construire les routes à nos populations. Nous n'allons pas attendre le pape pour pouvoir nettoyer donner de l'eau, de l'électricité, etc. Et si ça ne marche pas, c'est parce que ceux qui sont là aux affaires, ils n'ont pas intérêt à cela. Et là, ce sont les propres intérêts qui comptent et ils ne se consacrent exclusivement qu'à cela. Je vous assure qu'il y a un véritable traumatisme de penser qu'il y a le Cameroun a 350 000, je pense, à peu près, fonctionnaires, et que ces fonctionnaires se lèvent le matin, dans la grande majorité, avec la ferme intention d'aller se servir eux-mêmes au bureau. Donc, pas aller servir la République, pas aller servir le peuple. C'est-à-dire quelqu'un se lève tous les matins. Il dit qu'il est en train de partir au travail. Il faut qu'il parte au travail. Certains, même ici, en route, nous empêchent de circuler parce qu'eux, ils ont les voitures d'escorte avec les gyrophares, etc. Ils exigent qu'on leur laisse la route pour aller au travail.
And that has become the culture, Alain, because there are generations who think that that's what it means to be productive.
Exactly. So that is something that we need to explain to the people of Cameroon, and we need to use every means possible to get that message across. And tell people, please stop believing that somebody will come from heaven or I don't know from where to come and save Cameroonians, to come and change this situation. The only people who can do this are the Cameroonians themselves. And for you to be able to do that, you need to have the knowledge, you need to have the information that will allow you to understand your environment and change it. Ask yourself the right questions. The public space has been captive in Cameroon, whether you see it as through social media or the very many radios that are around. When you look at the public discourse, the public debate, you will wonder, if you are a tourist in Cameroon, you start asking yourself, what is going on? Wow. Me, I just came into this country. I saw that there is an issue. There's no light, there's no water, there are no roads, there are no schools, and so on and so forth. Where are all these people living? In which planet are they living in? How come this is not part of their main concerns?
Yes.
This is not part of their main concern. They will be talking about all sorts of things except the reality of their lives. You wake up in the morning, you are not sure about electricity, you are not sure about water, you are not sure, even when you look at the road, the taxi that you're going to take is extremely old and dirty and all that. But you don't want to involve yourself with that kind of concerns. You just want to maybe evade yourself and start talking about
it's like an
things.
elephant in the room. That is the elephant in the room. And like Eric said, just raising mediocrity. It's like it's at a whole new level. We're not dealing. I want to ask you a question, not extremely personal, but I want to say, you're young, you're in Cameroon, you're speaking, and they say a lot of people can't speak. I can't help it, and I to ask you, because as you're speaking, I'm like, wow. First, I was shocked you're in Cameroon. I'm like, whoa, this is a lot of boldness. I mean, you know what I mean? So what is your game? What is your game?
All right. I came back to Cameroon in like about 3 years ago, and I've been observing. But prior to that, I've always been very active in civil society space, right from the moment when I was in the university. But there comes a moment in your life where you start saying, keeping quiet is becoming also as criminal as those who are committing crimes. Last year, when President Issa Tchiroma's victory was stolen, then he declared that we're going to have ghost towns and all that. I asked my kids not to go to school. And then I start, for 3 days, they were at home. Then I started posting stuff on social media, in WhatsApp groups, to also pass the message and say, look, people, in Garoua, in Bafoussam, in Douala, people are not happy about what has happened. And you can see from the street, you can see that even the boycott is being observed. What about Yaoundé? These people are also Cameroonians. Are you trying to say that Yaoundé, people in Yaoundé, they're enjoying a better life than the rest of the people? They have water, they have electricity, they have roads. The civil servants are polite. They are focusing on general common interest, and then you have everything. So you start seeing the reaction in Yaoundé because of majority of the middle class. It's part of civil servants. People who believe that they know the situation is not quite good, but because they have found ways of surviving in that environment, they find it more risky to envisage change, to envisage something that they do not control, something that they cannot fathom. So that is the reason why Yaoundé here, and I think I said last time I spoke here, I said the battleground for Cameroon survival is Yaoundé. Every strategy that we put in place that does not focus primarily on Yaoundé is bound to fail. Because we've seen it in the 1990s, where we had several cities that were against this regime that wanted it to be overthrown. We've seen it recently during the elections. In 2008, I was on the street. In 2008, I was in the streets against the modification of the constitution. Because at that time, I had just finished with my master's at Yaoundé One University. I wanted something. I've seen what that government could offer to the people. I said, no, these guys should not change the constitution. Only 3 articles in the constitution. One, that we have to remove the term limits. Second, that he should be shielded from any investigation or any trial. This is not possible. It doesn't work. It cannot work. It cannot be acceptable in a republic. So in 2008, I was in the street fighting against that modification of the constitution. In 2026, I'm against it. Actually, I'm writing an op-ed that hopefully is going to be published on Monday morning to criticize this move by our parliament. But I believe that this should be something that all of us, everybody, according to their knowledge, according to their means, according to their networks, according to their understanding, we should be able to impose this topic in the public debate. We must ensure that we impose our own perspective, the perspective of the people in the public sphere. Because when you see the social media, people are talking about other things. When you listen to the radio, you listen to, it's like Cameroonians are living everywhere else except in their own country.
Wow.
Where they will be talking about the World Cup, they will be talking about what is happening in Iran and France, they will be talking about Cote d'Ivoire, but they're not talking about their own country and how their kids are not able to go to school and have proper healthcare, proper education, proper road, etc., etc. So I think Project C, one of our goals should be going forward to ensure that we bring these topics, these issues to the limelight, and that we attract the maximum of people into that space to have that conversation, to gain that knowledge, and to now act, because the time to act is now.
Thank you so much.
People cannot compromise the future of an entire country. Thank you, Eric.
No, thank you so much.
Thanks. Alan, thank you. Thank you for your courage. I think
we have
inspired me and many other people. So thank you so much for your courage. Yes.
Yes, thanks. I think we should round up at the hour, right? So
yes, we have
10 minutes to go. But I wanted to hear some more female voices. I know.
I saw Shira. I thought she was going to speak.
She's here. Judith Fang is here. A number of female, can they turn on their microphones and let's take a minute or two just to tell us how they feel. There's, Jacqueline is here. There's Elvie, Geraldine is here. Any of the ladies, please. We want to hear at least one or two of you in just 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we can wind up.
While they're coming, I'm just going to have Dr. Tita, whose hand is up.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. First off, I apologize for not getting on camera. Secondly, I want to say thank you to everyone on the panel for keeping the conversations going. I think keeping this week, to week is really crucial to get the message out. I was going to get a female voice going, but I can't do that. But I also want to say I'm very inspired by the last speaker, by what Alain said, being on the ground and everything, and calling for action now. This has gone on so long. I put my comments there. It's really gone on so long. What is happening today is just the next episode to what has been a long-standing issue. And so I've heard people say, these things take time. Totally agree. But I also think there are opportunities for action and for timely action to occur. And it does look like this is one of those moments. And what really got me is also something that Alain said, that when a call was made, right, he picked up and did a few things to continue to promote that call. So to me, you know, I think we have to talk as much as possible about this. I also think we have to come up with some action items so that people can pick up that relay and move forward. Because not everyone will be able to determine and get up and carry something and say, this is what I'm going to do. But they're looking for that leadership to say, these are the things to do. And can we get to say, these are some of the things to start doing? Can we say, let's get out in all the different cities around and start protesting what is going on? That would be one. Can we say, let's align with some things that are already going on, you know, in the grounds? I think that will be, you know, another. So the main reason I'm speaking today is just to say, some of us really love to, you know, pick up things like Alain said and act on them. So please, let's think about what we can get up tomorrow or later this week and tell people these are actions that we can take, and let them have that opportunity to take those things and run, or you know, or we fail. So again, thank you for keeping the conversation going. Really appreciate it.
Wow. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alain. Alan,
Yeah.
got to get used to this. Alain et Alan. Elizabeth.
Yes.
I thought you were going to have one of the ladies speak, whether it's Angeline or Judith.
I know, and I think they're coming. They may
I'll
have
let
been.
you do that.
I saw Shira, and I just kept thinking she was going to say something, and I was all ears, but I don't see her anymore, and that was for a while. And then, of course, Angeline and Judith. If there's anything that you wanted to add, it, you know, just your perspective.
Unmute, Judith, so we can see that you've unmuted.
Sometimes they may not.
Okay, because we're going to wind up in a few minutes, and I just have one thing to say before we do, and then, you know, bring in Ari and Elizabeth to say goodbye.
So Eric, why don't you go ahead? Just
yes. Okay. And yeah. Okay, the ladies, we must have them. Please talk to them during the week. We must have them speak next week. We can't move Cameroon alone, you know, just the men. And,
oh my goodness, absolutely
you know,
not.
And
I feel very lonely on this side.
No, you have a very strong female voice, but we need more people.
No, we need more.
You know. Anyway, the next week, and we had a plan this week to do a whole lot more on the Constitution. You'd be amazed how much work we've done and how much we want to share. We're eager to share with you. For example, we're going to be doing an analysis of the 1961 Constitution and the 1996 Constitution. And when we do that, you'll see why we've had the kinds of problems, including the Anglophone crisis, why we had that crisis. It all goes back to the Constitution. That is why it's so important for us to understand the moment, to understand what it is we are trying to achieve. So next week, we're continuing this discussion next week. Please, everybody should come in with ideas to move us forward. And we're going to be looking at what has happened since this week and assess whether this, a country is willing to move to the next level or not. We may not have the president-elect, le président élu, le président Tchiroma. We may not have them, but we'll definitely have his views on what is going on in the country next week. So there's a whole lot coming together next week and the week after that. Please be with us and make sure that we set this country on the pace for change. This is finally our opportunity. If we miss this trigger, that gun is not going to go off. We've got to make it go off. So thank you very much. I'll hand it back to Elizabeth and Array and Leopold.
Thank you. Geraldine, I think it's Dr. Geraldine, I can't remember, but I was hoping you would say something. You put a comment on, but we need you on the platform. She says, vous les faites tellement bien, les hommes. So, well.
Okay, that's what you're.
Yeah, but we need you, yes.
So, okay,
yes.
But next week, yeah?
Next week, exactly. So, anyways.
Well, that obviously brings us to the conclusion of the show today. Incredible. The conversations have just been fascinating, eye-opening, uplifting, encouraging at a time when it looks like the heavens are closing on Cameroonians. There are really dark clouds over our country today. There is no way in which we could say it. And in ideal circumstances, the people would respond to this in ways that they should. But obviously, so much has been said about just how there has been a mastery over the control of the reactions of the people. But in every circumstance, every regime that has existed in the past, there's always something that brings them down. And typically, they unmake themselves. And with every day that goes by, it seems like this regime is moving towards that. And for people who worry too much about what is the one thing that will happen, I would say that it will come. And probably when it comes, you and I may not see it coming. But we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared. And what we need to be prepared for, fellow Cameroonians, is the kind of Cameroon that we want. The vision of a country that we believe, that we hope and aspire for. What is that Cameroon that we want? What was it that triggered the founders of this great nation to dream of a country of two people who were culturally separated, coming together to form a union? What was that vision? How could we redefine it? And how could we build it for future generations that we may not even live to see? That we can certainly lay the foundation so that to the children that are being born tomorrow, that they grow up in a Cameroon that is better than what we have experienced. That's the task upon us. And that, yes, it may not be that we're out on the streets tomorrow, but it means that the work begins today to seriously think about a vision that can inspire and mobilize our people across the country to rise up and, yes, as Alain said, and say enough is enough. But we demand a better future for our country, Cameroon. That is the task we have. I will end here, but we'll be back next Saturday. Hopefully, start looking at the vision for what that future will look like. Thank you all.
All right. So we'll be back on Saturday next.
Thank you all. Merci beaucoup.
Good night. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.